There's something uniquely soul-crushing about watching someone steal the thing you built with your own hands, then smile at you while the room applauds them for it. So here's my question. What would you do if the person who took everything from you, your promotion, your projects, your name on your own work, couldn't even explain what they stole? Because that's exactly how I destroyed him. I'm Jake, 28, the kind of guy who pours art into everything he touches, sculptures, music, even corporate presentation. Derek is 31, my new boss, a man whose entire career is built on other people's talent and a smile that could sell you your own shoes. And Sarah, she's 26, my colleague, quietly furious and about to become the best co-conspirator I've ever had. The promotion was supposed to be mine. I don't say that with entitlement. I say it with the quiet certainty of a man who spent 14 months redesigning our entire client onboarding workflow, who stayed until midnight, building interactive presentation decks that made the VP of Operations literally stand up, clap, who sculpted a proposal so clean and elegant it became the template 3 departments now use. I say it because the hiring panel told me to my face that I was the front runner. Then Derek walked into the final interview with a portfolio I'd never seen him build and a smile that could sell you your own shoes twice. Senior Manager of Innovation. They gave him the title on a Tuesday. By Thursday, he'd sent a company-wide email announcing a team celebration at an upscale bar downtown. The email was warm, generous, full of exclamation points. The fine print was less festive. Each team member was expected to contribute $40 toward the venue and catering for his promotion party that we were throwing for him with our money. I remember Sarah reading the email at her desk, her jaw doing this slow tightening thing like she was physically biting back words. She looked at me. I looked at her. Neither of us said anything. We both paid. That was the first lesson in Derek's economy. Everything flows upward. The second lesson came fast. Within 2 weeks, Derek restructured our workload in ways that looked strategic on paper but felt surgical in practice. My project timelines doubled. Deadlines compressed. I went from leaving at 6 to leaving at 9, then 10, then not leaving at all some nights. My sculpting table at home gathered dust. My guitar case stayed closed so long the latches started to stick. I told myself it was temporary. New manager, new expectations. I'd adjust. But here's what I started noticing. The overtime wasn't distributed evenly. 3 of us carried 80% of the load while the rest of the team coasted. And the 3 of us, we were the ones who'd been vocally supportive of my promotion. Coincidence is a word people use when they don't want to see the pattern. I know a lot of you would have suggested that I switch companies. I know it's an easier fix. But the thing is, I had worked for 5 years in this company and I didn't want to leave it just because some jerk felt entitled to exploit me. I wanted to stay and prove my mettle. Otherwise it would be just like running away from the situation. I didn't want to give him that sense of satisfaction. Call it ego or whatever, but this is how it is. Why is it that we don't want to leave a toxic work environment? Do we want the last laugh? What point are we trying to make? Why do we feel that we're running away from something and not running to something better? I didn't have answers then. I just had stubbornness and a clenched jaw. Then came the report incident, and stubbornness stopped being enough. Sarah had compiled a quarterly analytics report, thorough, accurate, cross-referenced. She'd sent it to Derek for review before the department meeting. What she didn't know was that Derek edited the file after she submitted it. Changed 3 key data points. Small changes, but enough to make the projections look incoherent when the director started asking questions. Sarah stood in that conference room while the director frowned at her numbers. Her voice stayed steady, but I could see her hands trembling against the table edge, fingertips white. These projections don't align with Q2 actuals, the director said. They should, Sarah started. I pulled directly from... I flagged concerns about this report last week, Derek interrupted, leaning back in his chair with his performative reluctance. Like it pained him to say it. I should have followed up more closely. That's on me as her manager. The room heard accountability. I heard a man throwing someone under a bus while pretending to jump in front of it. Sarah's performance review that quarter included a note about attention to detail. she found out later. She came to my desk, sat down, and said nothing for a full minute. Then very quietly, he changed the file, Jake. I know. I have the original version. Save it. Save everything from now on. That was the moment Sarah stopped being my colleague and became something else entirely. Something sharper. But Derek wasn't done with me. Not even close. Because what came next was worse than overtime, worse than humiliation. It was hope. He assigned me the Meridian Project, a full-scale innovation proposal for our biggest client. Creative direction, visual design, strategic narrative. It was everything I was built for. For 3 months, I poured myself into it. I sculpted that project the way I sculpt clay, with patience, with obsession, with my fingerprints pressed into every surface. Late nights returned, but this time I didn't mind. I was creating again. The presentation was scheduled for a Friday. I prepared 46 slides. I rehearsed until the transitions lived in my muscle memory. Thursday evening, Derek called me into his office. Change of plans, he said, not looking up from his laptop. I'll be presenting Meridian tomorrow. Director wants senior leadership front and center on this one. My chest went hollow. It's my project. It's the company's project, Jake. He finally looked at me, that smile. I'll make sure to mention the team's contributions. He didn't. I sat in that room the next morning and watched Derek present my work, my architecture, my language, my creative vision to a room full of executives. My name appeared nowhere. Not on the deck. Not in his remarks. Not even in the follow-up email. The room applauded. Derek shook the director's hand. And something inside me finished dying and started building something new. That night, Sarah met me in the parking garage. She leaned against her car, arms crossed, eyes like flint. I have an idea, she said. But you're going to have to trust me. I looked at her. She looked at me. Derek's presenting the Helios proposal to the director next month, she continued. What if we make sure that this time, when he steals the work... She paused. A slow, dangerous smile. He steals exactly what we want him to. We spent 3 weeks building Helios. Or rather, we spent 3 weeks building 2 versions of Helios. The real version was elegant, a sustainability integration framework that would save the client $2.3 million annually. I designed it with the same obsessive precision I bring to everything. Every data point verified. Every projection stress tested. Every slide crafted like a sculpture. Each element load-bearing. The decoy version looked identical. Same formatting, same visual language, same confident tone. But Sarah and I had seeded it with errors, subtle ones, the kind that wouldn't jump out on a casual read but would collapse under the slightest interrogation. Revenue projections built on a formula that double-counted Q3 returns. A market analysis that cited a study which didn't exist. Implementation timelines that contradicted the budget allocations 3 slides later. The trap wasn't the errors, the trap was the depth. Derek never went deeper than surface level on anything he stole. He memorized talking points, not architecture. He learned the times what times, but never the times why asterisk. We were betting his entire career on that pattern holding. Sarah left the decoy file in the shared project folder on a Tuesday, time-stamped and version logged. The real version lived on an encrypted drive in my apartment next to my dusty sculpting table. Wednesday morning, the file's access log showed a download at 1147 p.m. Derek's credentials. Sarah pinged me one word. Times. Hooked. Asterisk. The presentation was scheduled for the following Friday. Director Morrison, 2 VPs, and a client liaison. High stakes. Exactly the kind of stage Derek couldn't resist. Thursday afternoon, Derek called me into his office. Same posture, same laptop staring performance, same script. I'll be handling the Helios presentation tomorrow. Director wants. Senior leadership front and center, I finished. Got it. He looked up, surprised. I think he expected resistance. Instead, I nodded and walked out. My hands were steady. My pulse was not. That night I rehearsed until 2 a.m. Not the decoy. The real thing. Friday. Conference room B, 10th floor. The long table, the projection screen, the filtered water nobody ever drinks. I sat in the second row with Sarah beside me. She had a manila folder in her lap, closed, unmarked. Her fingers rested on it like a pianist waiting for the downbeat. Derek opened strong. He always did. That was his gift, the performance. Confident posture, warm eye contact, the slight lean forward that said times I believe in this asterisk. He walked through the first 10 slides with the fluency of a man who'd built every pixel himself. Director Morrison nodded along. The VPs took notes. Then the questions started. Walk me through the revenue model, Morrison said. Casual. Conversational. The way a man asks a question he already knows the answer to. Derek smiled. Absolutely. So as you can see on slide 14, the projected returns are based on... The Q3 figures, Morrison interrupted. They seem high. How are you accounting for the seasonal adjustment? A pause. Barely half a second, but I saw it, the micro-freeze behind Derek's eyes. The moment a man reaches for knowledge that isn't there. The seasonal adjustment is factored into the baseline projections, Derek said smoothly. Where? Show me. Derek clicked back to slide 11. He stared at it. The formula was right there and it was wrong, and he didn't know it was wrong because he'd never understood what right looked like. It's the baseline here, incorporates... Derek. Morrison leaned forward. The implementation timeline on slide 22 allocates 4 months for phase 2, but your budget only funds 3. Which is correct? Silence. Derek's jaw worked. I watched his hand drift toward the laptop touchpad, scrolling, searching for an answer that the decoy would never give him. That's a formatting discrepancy, he tried. The actual? And the Whitfield study you cite on slide 18, Morrison continued, voice flat. My team couldn't locate it. Can you provide the source? The room had gone very still. The VPs had stopped writing. The client liaison was looking at her hands. Derek's face flushed from the collar upward, a slow red tide. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. I stood up. Director Morrison, if I may. Every head turned. Derek's eyes found mine, and for the first time, I saw something behind the smile, the raw animal recognition of a man watching his own trap close. I connected my drive to the secondary display. The real Helios opened on screen, clean, correct mine. The Q3 revenue model uses a weighted seasonal adjustment detailed here. I walked them through? Every question Morrison had asked, I answered with the precision of someone who'd built the thing from the foundation up. I corrected every seeded error not by naming them as traps, but by simply presenting work so clearly mine that the contrast did the talking. Then I said the sentence I'd been carrying for months. I'd also like to note that a similar discrepancy occurred with the Meridian project presentation in March. The original project files with my metadata and version history are available for review. Sarah opened her manila folder, placed 3 documents on the table, time-stamped file logs, original report versions, a paper trail that stretched back 8 months. Morrison looked at the documents, looked at Derek, said nothing. The silence lasted 11 seconds. I counted. Derek Morrison said. My office. Now, I know a lot of you suggested that I should have switched companies months ago. I know it's an easier fix. But the thing is, I worked 5 years in this company and I didn't want to leave it just because some jerk felt entitled to exploit me. I wanted to stay and prove my mettle. Call it ego or whatever, but this is how it is. The investigation took 2 weeks. Sarah filed her formal complaint about the falsified quarterly report, complete with her original file and Derek's edited version. 3 other colleagues came forward with their own stories, smaller thefts, quieter erasures, the same pattern wearing different masks. Derek's name disappeared from the employee portal on a Wednesday. No announcement, no farewell email, no explanation. He simply stopped existing in our systems the way a shadow disappears when you turn on the light. Our team now reports directly to Morrison. My name is on my projects. Sarah got her performance review amended. Last Tuesday, she sent me a message. Times, check your mail. Asterisk. A new set of sculpting tools. Professional grade. The card read Times, build something. Asterisk. Last night I opened my guitar case for the first time in 7 months. The latches stuck, then gave. The strings were dead, so I restrung them. Tuned each one by ear the way I learned as a kid, slowly listening for the moment the pitch stops fighting and settles into itself. I played for 2 hours. Nothing polished. Nothing performative. Just a man in his apartment making something that was entirely his own. The sculptor reclaims his craft. My husband smashed cake into my face at our wedding, knowing full well that the last person who did that gave me a scar on my forehead. He did it to impress my mother, the same mother who gave me that scar. So I left my own wedding in an Uber, wearing a frosting-covered dress filed for an annulment, and then his sister decided to tell me he'd been cheating on me for 6 months. Every single person I trusted showed me who they really were in the span of about 12 hours. I'm 27, my now ex-husband is Marcus, he's 29. My mother is Diane, and she's the reason I have a boundary about cake in the first place. Tanya is Marcus's sister, who apparently knew about the cheating the entire time. And Jess is my best friend, basically the only person I have left. Let me tell you about the scar first, because that's where everything starts. I was turning 17. Diane had promised times she wouldn't do the cake thing. Every year since I was maybe 8, it was her favorite party trick. Grab the back of my head, slam my face into whatever cake was in front of me and laugh, while I came up sputtering with frosting in my eyelashes. The whole family thought it was hilarious. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone howling while I stood there with buttercream in my nostrils, trying to smile so nobody would call me dramatic. But 17 was supposed to be different. I'd begged her the night before. Actually begged sitting on the edge of her bed while she scrolled through her phone. Please, Mom, not this year. I just want to blow out the candles like a normal person. She looked at me over her reading glasses. You're so sensitive. Fine, I won't touch your precious cake. The cake was from a bakery. 3 tiers because Diane liked to perform generosity in public. It had these decorative sugar flowers on top with wire stem stiff little metal pieces that held the petals in place. I remember thinking it was the most beautiful cake I'd ever had. I leaned in to blow out the candles. I felt her hand on the back of my skull before I even finished my wish. She drove my face straight down into the top tier. One of those wire stems caught me right above my left eyebrow and dragged a 2-inch gash across my forehead. I came up bleeding into the frosting, and for about 3 seconds the room was dead silent. Then Diane started laughing. Oh, stop it, it's barely a scratch. My aunt handed me a paper towel. Not a clean cloth, not ice, a paper towel. And the party continued. I got 4 stitches at urgent care. Diane told the nurse I'd tripped. I sat there watching her lie with dried frosting still crusted in my hair, and I thought, times, when I leave this house, I'm never letting anyone do that to me again. Asterisk. The scar faded but never disappeared. It sits just above my eyebrow, slightly raised, slightly lighter than the rest of my skin. I touch it sometimes without thinking, a little ridge that reminds me what promises from that woman are worth. I told Marcus about it on our 3rd date. We were watching videos on his phone, stupid stuff, memes, fail compilations, and one of those wedding cake smash videos came up. Bride gets a fistful of frosting shoved into her face. Groom doubles over, laughing comments full of crying, laughing emojis. Marcus thought it was hilarious. I didn't laugh. He noticed. And I told him everything. Diane, the wire stem, the stitches, the paper towel. I showed him the scar. He ran his thumb over it and said, "That's messed up. I'd never do that to you." Then, maybe a year later, another cake smash video. He showed it to me grinning, and I felt my stomach drop. "Marcus, I need you to hear me. If you ever smash cake in my face, ever, I will leave you. I don't care if it's our wedding. I don't care if everyone's watching. I will walk out, and I will not come back." He put his hands up. "Babe, relax. I would never..." I should have listened to the Times relax, asterisk. Jess told me later she always flinched when he said that word to me. "That's what people say when they want you to shrink," she said. But I didn't hear it then. I heard safety. I heard a man who was nothing like my mother. The wedding was exactly what I'd spent my whole life wanting. I planned every detail like I was building a house I'd actually get to live in. Ivory linens, candlelight, a string quartet during the ceremony because I dreamed about that since I was 15. The cake was simple, 2 tiers, white fondant, real peonies on top. No wire, no sugar decorations. I'd chosen it carefully, and if that sounds paranoid, you now understand why. The ceremony was perfect. Marcus cried during his vows. I believed every word. The reception was loud and warm and full of people I thought loved me. Diane was there being her best public self, hugging me, telling everyone how proud she was, performing the role of devoted mother so convincingly that I almost let myself believe it. We cut the cake together. Cameras everywhere. I was smiling so hard my face ached. Then I felt his hand leave the knife. I felt it before I understood it, a fistful of cake, wet and heavy, slamming into the side of my face. Frosting in my eye, up my nose, smeared across the scar on my forehead. The exact same sensation. The exact same helplessness. Marcus was laughing. That big, open-mouthed laugh he does when he's performing for a room. "You should see your face," he said. And behind him, I could hear Diane Times, howling times with laughter, clapping her hands together, and I heard her voice cut through the noise. "See? She's fine. She's always been too sensitive." The room was laughing. My family was laughing. His family was laughing. I stood there in my wedding dress with frosting dripping off my chin, and I touched the scar above my eyebrow, and something inside me clicked shut like a lock. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I set down my champagne glass, picked up my phone from the head table, and opened the Uber app. My hands were shaking so badly, it took 3 tries to type the address. Jess found me outside. "What are you doing?" "Leaving." "Okay," she said. No argument. No times are you sure, asterisk. Just, "Okay, I'll get your bag from the hotel room. Call me when you're somewhere safe." The Uber driver looked at me in his rearview mirror, poofy white dress, mascara, running frosting smeared across my bodice, and to his credit, he said absolutely nothing. He just drove. My phone started buzzing before we hit the highway. Marcus. Diane. Numbers I didn't recognize. I turned it face down on the seat and watched the venue shrink in the side mirror. I didn't pick up the phone until the next morning. And that's when I found out the cake wasn't even the worst part. I picked up the phone at 6:47 a.m., still in my wedding dress. I'd fallen asleep on Jess's couch without changing because taking it off felt like admitting the day had actually happened. The bodice was stiff with dried frosting. It crackled when I sat up. 32 missed calls. 14 texts from Marcus escalating from confused to angry to something that was supposed to sound like concern but read like a man upset his audience had noticed the bride disappearing. I called him back. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me was still waiting for the apology that would make it make sense. He picked up on the first ring. Finally. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? You just times left asterisk. In front of everyone. My mom was, 'You smashed cake in my face.' It was a times joke, times babe. Everyone does it at weddings. You completely overreacted and made me look, you knew. I told you what she did to me. I showed you the scar. I told you I would leave. Silence? Then, why should I have to apologize because you can't take a joke?" My hand was pressing against the scar. I didn't realize I was doing it until I felt the ridge under my fingertip. "Marcus. Why did you do it?" More silence. Longer this time. Then he said something that rearranged every memory I had of him. "Your mom said it would be funny. She said you'd laugh about it later, that you always make a big deal out of nothing and then get over it. She said it would show her family that I'm not." He stopped. "Not what?" "She said her side of the family thought I was too soft, that I let you control everything. She said if I did the cake thing, it would show them I wasn't whipped." I held the phone away from my ear and stared at it like it was something dead. Then I brought it back. "You did it to impress Vase's Diane." I did it because your family already thinks You chose my mother over me. The woman who times scarred times me. You chose her. You're being. Say times dramatic asterisk. Say times sensitive asterisk. Go ahead. Use her exact words. You've been using them for years, and I just didn't hear it. He started talking faster the way he always did when he felt the room turning against him. Look, just come home and we'll figure this out. You're my times wife, asterisk. You can't just... I'm getting an annulment. Over times, cake times, you're going to throw away our entire... I hung up. My thumb was trembling so badly I almost missed the button. The calls came in waves after that. Coordinated, like they'd all gotten together and assigned shifts. Diane first. Of course. I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail. I listened to it once and then deleted it, but I can still recite it from memory because certain sentences burn themselves into you like brands. You are going to die alone. You know that, right? You push away everyone who tries to love you. Your looks are going to run out fast, and when they do, no one will want you. No one. You'll be alone, and you'll deserve it. Her voice was calm, almost cheerful. The voice of a woman who'd been waiting years for her daughter's happiness to crack so she could pour herself into the fracture. Then Tanya. Tanya, who I'd thought was my friend, who I'd taken shopping for her bridesmaid dress, who I'd sat with on Marcus's parents' porch drinking wine and talking about our futures like we were sisters. She called me a disgusting bitch. Those were her exact words. Said I was hurting her brother, wasting his time. That she wished he would have broken up with me 2 years ago when he first wanted to. That sentence landed like a slap. Asterisk. 2 years ago when he first wanted to. Asterisk. Then, and I think she did this because she figured the bridge was already burning and she might as well use the gasoline, she told me he'd been cheating on me 6 months with his ex who'd wanted him back. The ex eventually dropped him because he stayed with me, but for 6 months he'd been sleeping with someone else while I was picking out peonies for our wedding cake. Tanya knew. The whole time. She knew, and she sat across from me at brunch and complimented my engagement ring and never said a word. I guess she put everything out on the table since I was leaving anyway. I blocked them in order. Marcus first. Then Diane, then Tanya, then aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone who'd laughed while frosting dripped off my chin. Everyone who'd laughed when I was 17. Everyone who'd handed me a paper towel instead of protecting me. My contact list got very short very fast. Jess came home that afternoon with a bag of my clothes she'd somehow retrieved from the hotel room. She set it by the couch and sat down next to me. You okay? He was cheating on me. She closed her eyes, let out a breath. I know this isn't the right time to say this. You saw something. I saw times enough asterisk. I didn't have proof. I didn't want to be wrong and lose you. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. Don't. You're the only person who doesn't owe me an apology. She said I could stay with her for a few months until I got back on my feet. No timeline, no pressure. I filed for the annulment on Tuesday. The paperwork was surprisingly thin for the demolition of an entire life. I started therapy 3 weeks later. My therapist said something in our second session that I haven't stopped thinking about. You didn't marry someone different from your mother. You married someone your mother trained you to accept. Marcus never hit me. He never screamed. He just dismissed me gently, warmly, with that easy smile every time I tried to tell him who I was. And I mistook that gentleness for safety because I'd only ever known the loud version of being ignored. I don't have a triumphant ending. I have a couch in my best friend's apartment and a therapist I see on Thursdays and a contact list with 4 names in it. I have a wedding dress in a garbage bag in Jess's closet that I can't bring myself to throw away or look at. I have a scar above my eyebrow that I touch every morning like a rosary. I have almost no one. But for the first time in my life, every person who's left actually gives a damn whether I'm okay. That's not a happy ending. But it's a clean one. And clean is more than I've ever had. My best man had a playpen set up in his bedroom for my infant son, and I was the last person to find out why. My fiancée spent months sneaking into his house, exchanging I love yous on Snapchat, and building a whole second life behind my back, and when I finally caught her, she didn't apologize. She filed a restraining order to try to take my son away from me, then showed up to our baby's doctor appointment and sat in my lap like nothing happened. I'm 23. My ex-fiancée is Megan, she's 21. My former best friend is Tyler, 23, the guy I literally asked to be my best man. And then there's Connor, Tyler's adopted brother, who ended up being the only one with enough conscience to send me the proof that blew everything wide open. Megan and I had been together since we were teenagers. High school sweethearts, the whole small town fairy tale. By the time our son was born, I thought we were locked and engaged, raising a baby, planning a wedding for August 19th. Tyler had been my closest friend since middle school. When I asked him to be my best man, it felt like the most natural decision I'd ever made. His family had practically adopted us. His mom babysat our son. His house was the place we all gathered on weekends around bonfires, passing beers, feeling like everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. The first crack didn't look like a crack. It looked like a fight about nothing. It started in early summer, Megan spending more and more time at Tyler's place. Not with me, without me. She'd take the baby over there in the afternoon and not come back until late. I'd get home from work and the apartment would be dark and empty. When I brought it up, she'd roll her eyes. His mom watches the baby so I can breathe for 5 minutes. You want me to lose my mind? I didn't push it. Tyler's family was generous. They had space, they had food, they loved our son. I told myself I was being paranoid. Jealousy was ugly. I wasn't going to be that guy. Then came the night of the bonfire. We were all out at a buddy's place mid-June, one of those nights where the smoke smells like summer and everyone's laughing too loud. I had a 4 a.m. shift the next morning, so around midnight I told Megan I was heading home. She wanted to stay. Fine. I kissed her, kissed the baby, drove back to our apartment, set my alarm, and crashed. I woke up at 3:15 a.m. to silence. The bed was empty. Cold. She hadn't come home. I called her. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. My chest started doing that thing where it tightens one rib at a time. I called Tyler. He picked up on the fourth ring, groggy. Yeah. Is Megan there? Pause. Yeah, man. She crashed here. She had the baby, didn't want to drive. I was at his house in 12 minutes. When I walked into Tyler's bedroom, Megan was passed out on his bed. Not the couch, not a guest room, his bed. And there in the corner was a playpen. Set up, ready. Like it lived there. My son was asleep in it, pacifier bobbing gently with each breath. Tyler was on the couch in the living room. He sat up when I came in, rubbing his eyes like this was all perfectly normal. She didn't want to wake the baby, he said. I looked at him. Looked at the playpen. Looked at my fiancé in his sheets. Why is there a playpen in your bedroom, Tyler? My mom put it there. For when she babysits. I woke Megan up. She blinked at me, disoriented, then annoyed. What are you doing here? You're in his bed, Megan. I fell asleep. The fire went late. I didn't want to drive with the baby. You could have called me. My phone died. It rang before going to voicemail. That means it was on. Her face shifted. Okay, it didn't die, but I didn't see your calls. I was asleep. 3 stories in 60 seconds. Each one replacing the last without acknowledgement, like the previous version had never existed. I stood there holding my son's diaper bag, watching her rearrange reality in real time, and something in my gut went cold. But I didn't have the proof. I didn't have anything except a feeling and a playpen that shouldn't have been there. So I swallowed it. July 5th broke me open. We'd been fighting for weeks straight about Tyler, about her being gone, about the wedding plans she kept pushing off. That night she left the apartment twice, slamming the door both times, and both times I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets wondering if I was the problem. After she came back the second time, I did something I'm almost embarrassed to admit. I wrote her a letter. Handwritten. Pages. Everything I felt, how much I loved her, how scared I was of losing our family, how I wanted to fix whatever was breaking between us. I left it on her pillow. She read it. She cried. We talked for an hour, voices low, faces closed. She said she was sorry. She said she loved me. We fell asleep, spooning her back, pressed against my chest, my arm around her waist, and for one night I believed we'd survive. Then her phone lit up on the nightstand. I wasn't asleep yet. The screen glowed in the dark. Snapchat notification. Tyler's Bitmoji. I told myself not to look. I told myself for about 4 seconds. I picked up the phone. I opened the app originally, intending to send Tyler a sarcastic message, something like, "Times thanks for finally texting back buddy times," because he'd been dodging me for weeks. But the message thread was already open. And I read everything. Coordinated visits behind my back. Fabricated alibis. Plans for her to come over when I was at work. Pet names. Flirtation that made my stomach lurch. And then clear as a blade. Asterisk, I love you. Asterisk. Asterisk, I love you too. Asterisk. My hands were shaking so hard, the phone nearly slipped. Megan was still curled against me, breathing slow, and even her hair smelling like the same shampoo she'd used since high school. I could feel her heartbeat through her back. I set the phone down. I stared at the ceiling until my alarm went off. When I confronted her the next morning, she didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it either. She went straight to offense. You went through my phone. That's a violation of my privacy. You're telling Tyler you love him. You had no right. Are you sleeping with him? I'm not doing this. For 15 days, she refused to cut Tyler off. 15 days of circular arguments that went nowhere, of her sleeping beside me while texting him, of me begging for honesty from someone who had forgotten what the word meant. On July 21st, I packed a bag and walked out. And that's when Megan stopped pretending and started trying to destroy me. Within 48 hours of me leaving, Megan filed for a full stay-away order of protection against me and our son. Let that land for a second. Not a custody petition, not a request for space. A stay-away order, the kind reserved for people who pose a genuine threat. She wanted a judge to legally prohibit me from being near my own child, the same child she'd been parking in a playpen in another man's bedroom while I worked overnight shifts to keep formula in the cabinet. I found out through a phone call from my mother, who found out from the courthouse. I was sitting in my truck in a gas station parking lot when she told me, and I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white and stayed that way for minutes after I let go. The indentations from the leather stayed pressed into my palms like branding. She had no grounds. No evidence of abuse, no police reports, no witnesses to anything, because there was nothing to witness. But she filed it anyway, banking on the system's default sympathy, banking on the assumption that a young mother's word would outweigh a young father's presence. And while the petition worked its way through the court, she moved into Tyler's house. Officially, with our son. My best man was now playing house with my fiancée and my baby in the same bedroom where I'd found that playpen. Then Connor called. Connor was Tyler's adopted brother, quieter, kept to himself, the kind of guy who sat at the edge of bonfires and watched more than he talked. I hadn't spoken to him since everything imploded. When his name popped up on my phone, I almost didn't answer. "I need to send you something," he said. No greeting. His voice was flat disgusted. "Check your messages. Photos. Screenshots. Megan and Tyler together at the house, not hiding, not careful, just times together, asterisk. Her on the couch with her legs across his lap. Him feeding my son in a high chair like it was his kitchen, his family, his life. Timestamps that overlap with the weeks she'd been swearing nothing was happening. I can't watch this anymore," Connor said. "My own brother. In our parents' house. It's sick." I stared at the photos until my screen dimmed. Then I sent every single one to Megan's parents, to Tyler's parents, to our mutual friends, to anyone who'd spent the last month hearing her version of events, that I was controlling, that I was paranoid that she left because she was times scared times of me. The truth detonated across our entire small town in a single evening. Megan's family went silent. Her mother, who I'd watched cry at our engagement party, stopped returning her calls. Her sister unfollowed her on everything. Tyler's parents, the same people who'd opened their home to us, who'd set up that playpen, who'd fed our son mashed bananas on Sunday mornings, asked Megan to find somewhere else to stay. She didn't. Tyler convinced them to let her remain. The house divided against itself. And then came the doctor's appointment. Our son had a follow-up visit routine scheduled months prior. We were both listed as parents. Both had a right to be there. I arrived early, sat in the waiting room with my hands between my knees, mentally rehearsing how to be civil to a woman who was actively trying to get a restraining order against me. Megan walked in 7 minutes late, and the performance began immediately. She sat down next to me. Not across the room. Not one chair apart. Asterisk. Next to me. Asterisk. Close enough that her thigh pressed against mine. I shifted away. She closed the gap. "How's he been sleeping?" she asked bright-eyed, like we were still a couple comparing notes over breakfast. "Fine." "Is he still doing that thing where he rubs his ear when he's tired? He was doing that last." "He's fine, Megan." She put her hand on my knee. I looked down at it like it was a foreign object. This woman had filed paperwork to keep me away from my child, and now her fingers were resting on my jeans like we were in a waiting room for a sonogram, not a pediatrician's office built on the wreckage of everything she'd burned. When they called our son's name, she stood and looped her arm through mine. I pulled away hard enough that the receptionist glanced up. "Don't touch me." Her eyes went wide, hurt, confused, a masterclass in performed innocence. "I'm just trying to be a good mom. We're here for times him, asterisk." In the exam room, she peppered the doctor with questions she already knew the answers to, nodding earnestly, touching our son's hair, narrating every reaction like a documentary about devoted motherhood. She sat so close to me, our shoulders touched. At one point, she leaned over and whispered, "We make a beautiful kid, don't we?" I couldn't speak. My jaw was locked so tight I could hear my own teeth grinding. People in the community later told me times, "It seems to me that she's testing the waters." Be careful, my friend. Asterisk. I couldn't begin to understand why. She was happy as can be, dating my former best friend, had attempted to file an order of protection on me, and we were about to begin a family court battle that was already leaning toward me. What waters were left to test? Someone put it bluntly times, Mate, you have to realize that nobody can understand crazy. We can try to find reasons for her behavior, but none would be good reasons. For me, it sounds like a crazy, entitled narcissist brat who doesn't care about what you feel. She wants to cheat, she cheats. She wants you gone, so she tries to get the restraining order. She wants to play with the kids, she will. She wants to talk to you, then she will talk to you. Asterisk. That's Megan. Chaos is currency, control is oxygen. The order of protection was denied. The court saw through it. Megan, perhaps sensing the ground shifting, offered joint custody, unprompted a move that reeked of strategy, not generosity. Her own family still wouldn't back her. The case leaned my way and everyone in town knew why. But here's what no one tells you about winning. August 19th came. Our wedding date. I spent it on my mother's porch, drinking a beer I couldn't taste, watching the sun go down over the same town where I'd proposed, where I'd held my son for the first time, where I'd asked my best friend to stand beside me at the altar. That evening, I drove to the grocery store and saw them in the parking lot. Megan, in the passenger seat of Tyler's truck, my son's car seat, visible in the back. The three of them pulling out of a spot, like any other family, on any other Tuesday. I sat in my truck until they were gone. My hands were steady, my chest was not. The wedding never happened. The friendship was ash. The woman I'd loved since I was 16 was living in the house of the man I'd trusted most. And my only victory, the only one that mattered, was this: I left. The truth was no longer hidden. And my son would grow up knowing that his father fought for him, not against the people who betrayed him, but times for him, asterisk. Every swallowed insult, every clenched jaw in a waiting room, every night I chose silence over rage. It was all for him. That's the part they don't put in the fairy tale. Sometimes the best man was never the best man. Sometimes the only way to protect your family is to watch it be stolen and prove day by day that you were the one worth keeping. My mother-in-law called 911 on me for putting my baby on his stomach. The pediatrician told me to do it. She told me it was violence. So here's the situation. My mother-in-law moved in for 3 months to help with our newborn, and it was mostly fine until she decided that doctor-recommended tummy time was child abuse. She physically snatched my son out of my hands, called the cops when I wouldn't give him back, and threatened CPS, all while the actual abuser and her family, her own husband, sat comfortably on the other side of the country, pulling strings. The police showed up, found a happy baby in a clean house, and basically told her they were there for her therapy session. I'm a guy in my mid-30s. My wife is Sarah. Her mother is Dolores. Her father is Victor, the man who actually beat his kids for years while Dolores watched. And then there's Marco, Sarah's younger brother, who's honestly just as fed up with all of this as we are. Let me back up. When Sarah first told me her mother wanted to come stay with us for 3 months after the baby arrived, I said yes, immediately. That's what I do. I say yes. I say yes to overtime, yes to hosting holidays, yes to lending money I don't have. Sarah once told me my spine was made of marshmallow, and she meant it with love, but she also meant it. Dolores flew in from the other side of the country 2 weeks before our son was born. She arrived with 3 oversized suitcases, a carry-on stuffed with baby blankets she crocheted herself, and a list of opinions about our house that she started sharing before her shoes were off. The cat shouldn't be in the nursery. The white noise machine would damage the baby's hearing. The pediatrician we'd chosen was too young. I smiled at all of it. Sarah squeezed my hand under the dinner table and mouthed times, "Thank you, asterisk." And honestly, the first 2.5 months were fine. Better than fine. Dolores cooked. She cleaned. She held the baby for hours so Sarah and I could sleep. She sang to him in Spanish, these low lullabies that made his whole body go slack. I'd come downstairs at 2 a.m., and find her rocking him in the dark, whispering to him like he was the most important person who had ever existed, and I'd think times, this is why we said yes. Asterisk. There were small things. She'd make comments about the pediatrician times. Are you sure she knows what she's doing? She looks like she just graduated times, and I'd explain that, doctor. Fam had been practicing for 12 years and came highly recommended. Dolores would nod, like she was humoring me. She unplugged the white noise machine twice. She rearranged the nursery without asking. Small things. I filed them away and kept smiling. Then came tummy time. Our son was 3 months old. Dr. Pham had been recommending supervised tummy time since his 1-month checkup. Standard stuff, 5 minutes here and there, builds neck strength, prevents flat spots. I'd been doing it daily. The baby hated it, obviously. He'd fuss and grunt and turn red and sometimes cry, and I'd talk to him the whole time, my face right down on the mat with his narrating his struggle like a sports commentator. Asterisk. And he lifts the head, ladies and gentlemen, and we have liftoff. Oh, and he's back down. Devastating. Asterisk. Dolores had seen me do this dozens of times. She never said a word about it. Not once. Until that Tuesday. I was on the living room floor with the baby on his playmat, maybe 3 minutes into tummy time. He was fussing, not crying, fussing, the low-grade grumbling that meant he was working hard and didn't love it. I had my hand on his back. Dolores walked in from the kitchen. She didn't say anything at first. She just stood there. I felt her watching and looked up, and the expression on her face stopped me cold. Her jaw was set. Her hands were balled at her sides. She was looking at my hand on the baby's back like it was a weapon. Dolores, he's fine. This is just tummy. She crossed the room in 3 steps, bent down and scooped him off the mat, not gently. She grabbed him under the arms and pulled him to her chest and turned her back to me in one motion like she was shielding him from an explosion. You are hurting him, she said. Her voice was shaking. This is violence. You are committing violence against this baby. I stayed on the floor. My knees were still on the mat. I remember looking at the little drool spot where his face had been and thinking, times, did that just happen? Asterisk. Dolores. I stood up slowly. The pediatrician. I don't care what she said. I have eyes. He was suffering. I took a breath. I let it go. I told myself she was tired, that she was from a different generation, that she loved him and was scared. I explained tummy time again, calmly, like I was reading from a pamphlet. She wouldn't look at me. She held the baby tighter and walked to the guest room and shut the door. I let it go. I actually let it go. The next afternoon, Sarah was at work. The baby was in his bassinet in our bedroom doing what babies do, squirming, fussing, making those little congested grunts. Because his nose was stuffy. No tummy time. He was on his back. I was sitting on the bed next to him, scrolling through my phone, waiting for him to settle. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Fast ones. The door swung open and Dolores was there, eyes wide, already reaching. Give me the baby. He's fine, Dolores. He's just fussy. Give me the baby times now, asterisk. The word came out of my mouth before I could soften it. Just times, no asterisk. Flat. Final. Maybe the first real no I'd said to anyone in years. She stared at me. I stared back. Then I stood up, walked to the bedroom door, and closed it. I turned the lock. For about 10 seconds, nothing. Then I heard her pick up the phone in the hallway. I need the police. My son-in-law is hurting the baby. He locked himself in a room with the baby and won't let me in. The police arrived in 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the nightstand the entire time, holding my son against my chest, listening to Dolores pace the hallway and mutter in Spanish. 11 minutes of wondering if this was actually my life. 2 officers. One tall, one short, both polite. They asked to see the baby. I brought him out. He was is asleep. He'd fallen asleep on my chest approximately 40 seconds after Dolores made the call, because that's what babies do. When you hold them and stay calm, they stop caring about whatever was bothering them and they sleep. The tall officer looked at the baby. Looked at me. Looked around the house, clean dishes in the rack, laundry folded on the couch, cat asleep on the windowsill, the little playmat still spread out on the living room floor with its cheerful giraffe pattern. Sir, the baby looks fine. He is fine. Dolores started talking. She told them about the tummy time. She told them about the nasal aspirator I used when his nose was stuffy. The snot sucker, she called it. And how it was cruel. She told them the cat hair was a respiratory hazard. She told them the white noise machine was damaging his eardrums. She told them I had locked her out of the room, which was true, and that the baby had been screaming, which was not. The short officer was writing in his notepad. I watched his pen stop moving about halfway through Dolores' monologue. He looked at his partner. His partner looked at the ceiling. Ma'am, the tall one said, it sounds like you're describing standard infant care. I am describing a pattern. Okay. He turned to me. Sir, does the baby see a pediatrician regularly? Every scheduled visit. I can show you the records. That won't be necessary. He closed his notepad. Look, we're required to respond to every call. But what I'm seeing here is a healthy baby in a clean home with a parent who seems to be doing just fine. He paused. This feels more like a venting session. The short officer actually snorted. Dolores drew herself up to her full 5'2". I will call CPS. That is your right, ma'am. They left. Dolores stood in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed, vibrating with something I couldn't name. I called Sarah. Sarah was home in 20 minutes. I've never seen her drive that fast. She came through the front door, still in her work badge, keys in her fist, and she looked at her mother with an expression I'd never seen on her face before, not anger exactly, but a door closing. A lock turning. Get out. Sarah times Mija times you don't understand. Get out of my house. He was hurting. He was doing times tummy time times mom. You called the times police times on my husband for doing times tummy time asterisk. If you had seen his face, the baby's face. I've seen it. I've seen it 100 times. It's what babies look like. Get your things. Dolores packed. It took 40 minutes. I sat on the couch and held the baby and stared at the wall. Sarah stood in the hallway like a sentry, arms folded, watching her mother zip each suitcase. Nobody spoke. I drove Dolores to a motel. I don't know why I was the one who drove her. People pleaser, autopilot. Sarah didn't offer, and Dolores didn't ask for her. The car ride was 14 minutes of silence, and the sound of Dolores breathing through her nose. The next morning, I drove her to the airport. Halfway there, sitting at a red light, I said it. Are you going to apologize? She looked out the window. To who? To me. To Sarah. To the police officers you wasted the time of. If you had explained the tummy time better, I would have understood. You never explained it properly. I had explained it 4 times. I had shown her the pamphlet from Dr. Pham's office. I had pulled up the AAP guidelines on my phone. She had watched me do it for times weeks, asterisk. You're never going to see your grandchild again. My voice cracked on times, grandchild asterisk. I was shaking. My hands on the steering wheel were white. I told her she is not welcome in our house. I said, though, I was speaking to myself more than to her. If I see her anywhere near our house, I'm calling the police for trespassing. Then I said it. The thing I kind of regret. "You're a bad person, Dolores." She had tears in her eyes. I pulled up to the departures curb and got out and hauled her suitcases onto the sidewalk, fast shaking, wanting to be done. I got back in the car and pulled away. A tap on the glass. I nearly kept driving. But I stopped, and there she was, pointing at the back seat. One bag. I'd missed one bag. I popped the door and she reached in and I said it again, "You will never see your grandchild again," and she pulled the bag out and I drove away. She's presumably back with Victor on the other side of the country now. I really can't say I felt better. The rest of that day I felt just sad in general, and I couldn't figure out why. I hadn't felt like cooking, even though I cook most days. Sarah ordered Thai food and we ate it on the couch in silence while the baby slept between us. 4 months later, Marco got married overseas. Sarah wanted to go. Marco was the sibling who'd taken the worst of Victor's abuse, broken arm at 9, bruises he learned to hide by middle school, and he'd clawed his way out and built a life on another continent and found someone who loved him. And Sarah wasn't going to miss it. So we went. Dolores was there. Of course she was. She approached Sarah on the second day at the rehearsal dinner while I held the baby across the room and watched. Sarah had sent her a letter months earlier, a detailed specific list of what accountability would look like. Acknowledge what you did. Acknowledge times why, times you did it. Get help. "I'm sorry for what happened in those days," Dolores said. I felt very tired. Sarah waited. "When I was a girl," Dolores continued, "my cousin used to hold me down, and I couldn't move, and I think when I saw the baby on his stomach..." "Mom, it wasn't your cousin. It was Dad." Dolores' mouth opened, closed. She picked up her wine glass and walked away. She never mentioned Victor. Not once. Not the years of bruises, not the silence she kept, not the children she didn't protect. She found a cousin from 40 years ago to blame, and she walked away with her wine. We blocked them both, Dolores and Victor, on everything. Phone, email, social media. All of it. 3 weeks after the wedding, Marco called. Dolores and Victor, who had told Marco they couldn't afford to contribute to his wedding, had posted photos from a European vacation, Portugal, Spain, smiling on a terrace somewhere with sangria. Marco hasn't spoken to them since. My son is 7 months old now. He has one set of grandparents' mind. My parents come over every Sunday. My dad, who has never raised a hand to anyone in his life, picks up the baby and bounces him and makes airplane noises. Last week, the baby dropped a toy, and my dad gasped and said, "Oh my God, times, child abuse times." And Sarah laughed so hard she choked on her coffee. That's the only version of that phrase I ever want to hear in my house again. I spent 10 years fighting for a marriage that never actually existed. Let me explain what I mean by that. I married my wife thinking we were building something real. Turns out she never loved me, married me because her mother pressured her into it, and when I finally got vulnerable enough to share my deepest secrets, she used them as a permission slip to cheat. The kicker, when I finally stopped begging and started healing, suddenly she wanted me back. I'm 32 male. My wife is Renee, 31. Her mother, Lorraine, is a devout Jehovah's Witness, who basically orchestrated our entire marriage. There's a guy I never saw coming, who I'll get to later. And then there's Mia, the woman who finally showed me what it feels like when someone actually loves you back. But I need to start from the beginning, because this thing unraveled slowly. When I was 8 years old, someone I trusted did something to me that I didn't have words for until I was 30. I carried it like a stone in my chest, this dense, hot thing I could feel pressing against my ribs. Every time someone got too close, every time intimacy required me to be fully present. I never told anyone. Not my parents. Not my friends. Not Renee. Instead, I built a version of myself that looked functional. I was the guy who worked hard, who showed up, who said the right things. And when I met Renee at 21 through her family's congregation, Lorraine's congregation, I thought I'd found the person I could finally be safe with. We dated for a year. Lorraine loved me. I was a good brother, she said. Responsible. Spiritual. Marriage material. Renee and I had chemistry, sure, but looking back, I realized Lorraine was the engine behind everything. She'd call Renee after our dates and ask pointed questions. She'd remind her that good witness women didn't date casually. She'd quote scripture about the virtue of marrying young. Renee was 20 when we got engaged. 21 at the altar. I thought she was happy. Her smile looked real. Her vows sounded real. The first few years felt real enough that I stopped questioning. But there was always this distance, a thin pane of glass between us that I could feel but never name. I'd reach for her hand and she'd let me hold it, but she never reached first. I'd plan date nights and she'd attend them pleasant and present, but never electric. I told myself that's just what long-term love looked like. Comfortable. Steady. I told myself I was lucky. Here's the thing I hid from her. I used adult content. Not constantly, not compulsively, but regularly enough that it became a quiet habit I maintained behind closed doors. For a Jehovah's Witness marriage, this was nuclear. I knew that. So I lied about it. Small lies, casual deflections, a browser history wiped clean like it never happened. It wasn't the content itself that mattered, it was the lying. The pattern of concealment. I built a tiny room inside our marriage where I kept my shame and I locked the door. For 10 years, that door stayed shut. Then at 30, I started therapy. The childhood abuse came spilling out like water through a cracked dam, first a trickle during session 3, then a flood by session 7. My therapist helped me understand that the adult content used, the secrecy, the inability to be fully vulnerable with Renee, it was all connected. Survival mechanisms I'd built as a kid that had calcified into adult habits. She told me healing required honesty. Total honesty. With everyone. So one night, I sat Renee down at our kitchen table and I told her everything. The abuse, the content, the lies. I was shaking so hard the table vibrated. I couldn't look at her face, so I stared at her hands instead, watched her fingers go white around her coffee mug. When I finished, the silence lasted so long, I thought she'd left the room. Then she spoke. I almost didn't marry you. My head snapped up. I was still in love with my ex, she said. The week before the wedding, I told my mom I wanted to call it off. She said I'd be disgracing Jehovah. She said I'd made a commitment, and good Christian women don't run from commitments. Renee's voice was flat. Clinical. Like she was reading someone else's story. So I walked down the aisle, and I tried. I really tried to love you the way you love me. Tried? That word landed in my stomach like a fist. Everything after that conversation moved in slow motion and double speed simultaneously. Renee said she needed space to process. I gave it to her. She enrolled in community college courses. I supported it. She started going out with classmates, bars, parties, club meetings that ran until midnight, then 1 a.m., then 2. I responded the only way I knew how. I became more helpful, more present. I cooked her favorite meals. I cleaned the apartment until it gleamed. I left notes on the bathroom mirror in her love language, words of affirmation, acts of service, every tool the marriage books recommended. I poured myself into a void and called it devotion. She stopped touching me entirely. No hugs. No kisses. She'd angle her body away on the couch like proximity to me was a chore. I'd ask if she wanted to watch a movie together, And she'd say she had studying to do, then I'd hear her laughing on the phone in the bedroom with the door closed. 3 months into this, I asked her directly, "Do you still love me?" She was standing at the kitchen counter scrolling her phone. She didn't look up. "I don't think I was ever times and times love with you," she said. "I love you as a person, but I don't think I've ever been in love with you." My knees buckled. I actually grabbed the counter to stay upright. I begged her for couples therapy. I printed out lists of counselors, highlighted the ones with sliding scale fees offered to handle all the scheduling. She said she'd think about it. A week passed. 2. I asked again. "I don't think therapy can fix what was never there," she said. I stopped sleeping. I'd lie in bed next to her, this woman I'd given a decade to, and listen to her breathe and wonder how I'd loved someone so completely who had never once felt the same way back. The glass pane I'd always sensed between us finally had a name times she was never mine. Asterisk. Then I found the messages on her phone. And everything I thought I knew about how much this could hurt turned out to be a warm-up. The messages were from a number saved under a coworker's name, but coworkers don't text each other at 1:47 a.m. about how they can still feel each other's skin. I read them standing in the bathroom with the door locked, my thumb scrolling while my vision tunneled. Explicit. Tender. The kind of intimate shorthand that only develops over weeks, maybe months. She'd been telling him things about me, about my therapy, my childhood, my issues. He'd responded with the exact right amount of performative sympathy. Asterisk. You deserve someone whole times, he'd written. She'd sent back a heart emoji. I confronted her that night. Didn't yell. Couldn't. My voice came out in this strange, airless whisper like someone had punctured my lungs. Who is he? It's not what you... Renee. Who is he? She told me. A guy from one of her college clubs. She said it had only gotten physical once. The messages said otherwise. She cried. She said she'd stop. I washed her face and tried to find the woman I'd married and couldn't locate her anywhere. She stopped for 11 days. I counted them like a man counting steps across a frozen lake listening for cracks. On day 12, I saw his name light up her phone screen while she was in the shower. She changed his contact name but used the same heart emoji next to it. When I confronted her again, she turned it on me. Maybe if you'd been more affectionate after everything came out. I told you I was times sexually abused as a child, times Renee. And I needed time to process that, and instead of giving me space, you smothered me in I. You were already talking to him before I told you anything. She went quiet. The math didn't work, and she knew it. The timeline of those messages predated my confession by at least 3 weeks. She'd started reaching for someone else while I was still rehearsing how to be honest with her. We separated under the same roof because neither of us could afford to leave. 6 months. 180-some days of passing each other in the hallway, like ghosts, occupying different dimensions of the same haunted house. She slept in the bedroom. I slept on the couch. She'd come home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine, and I'd lie there in the dark, cataloging the scent like evidence I'd never use. Darius. I never said his name out loud, but I learned it. He was in his 30s, recently divorced himself, and apparently ready to play house with someone else's wife. Renee started packing boxes. Casual at first, a few books, some clothes. Then the kitchen items she'd brought into the marriage. Then the photos off the walls, leaving pale rectangles on the paint like surgical scars. I'm getting my own place, she said. You're moving in with him. It's not a relationship. You're moving in with him, Renee. She didn't deny it a second time. During those 6 months, I came closer to not surviving than I'd been since childhood. There were nights I sat in my car in the parking garage with the engine running and no destination, just the low hum of the motor and the thought that it would be very easy to stop trying. My therapist adjusted my sessions to twice a week. She gave me a crisis number I kept in my wallet like a talisman. I used it once at 3 a.m. Sitting on the kitchen floor, unable to remember how to fill out the divorce paperwork I'd printed 6 times. The man who survived what happened at 8 years old almost didn't survive 32. But I did. Barely. Ugly. One breath at a time. Renee moved out on a Saturday. I didn't watch her load the truck. I sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks away and stared at a muffin I couldn't eat until my phone buzzed, times I left the keys on the counter. Asterisk. Over the next year, I rebuilt myself the way you rebuild a house after a flood, gutting everything down to the studs and deciding what's worth keeping. Therapy. Journaling. A gym membership I actually used. Slowly, carefully, I started to date a little and then found a great girl. Mia didn't fix me. She didn't need to. She just showed up consistently and spoke my love languages back to me like they were her native tongue. I was ultra transparent with my new girlfriend, told her everything, the abuse, the marriage, the wreckage. She held my hand through it and didn't flinch. Meanwhile, Renee dumped Darius within 3 months. Started her own therapy. Began recognizing the self-sabotage the way Lorraine's pressure had warped her into someone who made decisions out of fear and then punished everyone around her for the cage she'd built. She wanted to see me happy, but she was hurting. I'd been talking about divorce for months and slowly worked on getting the papers filled out. I needed to take the final steps of filing, and I did it. I don't think Renee ever took me seriously, because now she was crying, wanting me back. Calling, texting. Showing up at my apartment with swollen eyes and apologies that sounded for the first time like they came from somewhere real. It's been so hard for me, because it actually seems remorseful, but it's too little too late. Some may think it's wrong or irrational, but I've held compassion for my ex. I know her problems and struggles, and just want to see her happy. I just couldn't get past her affair and how it hurt me so badly. When I look at her, all I see is him lurking around. I signed the papers on a Tuesday morning. Mia drove me. She waited in the car and didn't ask how it went. When I came out, just handed me a coffee and squeezed my knee. I'm rather proud of myself for being courageous enough to choose my own life. The 8-year-old boy who learned to be silent. The 21-year-old groom who mistook obligation for love. The 30-year-old man who cracked himself open hoping honesty would save his marriage. They all live in me. But they don't run me anymore. I do.
There's a picture on my fridge held up by a magnet shaped like a slice of pizza. It's of me, my older brother Leo, and my younger sister Mary. We're all under 10 sporting bowl cuts and matching hideous Christmas sweaters. Leo looks annoyed. Mary is beaming like she just invented sunlight. And I'm just there. A ghost in a green and red cable knit, not quite in focus. That photo is a perfect summary of my family. Leo, the firstborn son. He could set the house on fire, and my parents would praise his initiative. He's 27 now, works some vague but important-sounding finance job, and gets a free pass on everything because he's building his career. Then there's Mary the baby. At 20, she's the family's eternal project, the sun around which my parents orbit. Her latest project becoming a single mother to twin boys. My parents were thrilled. They threw her a baby shower that cost more than my first car, co-signed for a 2-bedroom apartment she couldn't afford, and built an entire nursery by hand. My dad, who never once came to any of my swim meets, suddenly learned how to assemble a crib. 2 of them, actually. And then there's me, Harper. The 2, 3, 8-year-old middle child, the high-achieving, self-sufficient, utterly invisible one. I put myself through college, got a great job in graphic design, and live in a city 2 hours away that they've visited exactly once. For my graduation. They left before the reception. They've never seen my apartment, the one I pay for all by myself. They don't know my boss's name, my best friend's face, or the fact that for the past year I've been dating the most amazing woman I've ever met. Her name is Chloe. My family has no idea she exists. To them, my life is a blank slate, a void they can fill with their needs whenever it's convenient. My achievements are met with a distracted, "Oh, that's nice, dear." My struggles are met with silence because I learned a long time ago not to share them. But Mary gets a standing ovation for successfully making toast. The twins Noah and Caleb are a month old now. My phone, which used to ring maybe once a week with a perfunctory call from my mom, now pings constantly. Not with questions about my life, of course. It's a running commentary on Mary's. Asterisk. Mary is so tired, poor thing. Asterisk. Asterisk. The babies are so precious you really need to come see them. Asterisk. Asterisk. Your father is going over to fix her leaky faucet. He's just a saint. Asterisk. I'd seen the babies, of course. I drove down the weekend after they were born, brought a mountain of diapers and a ridiculously expensive stroller I couldn't really afford. I held them cooed over them and watched my parents flutter around Mary like she was a fragile queen. They barely spoke to me. I was just another pair of hands to hold a baby while someone else peed. I left after 4 hours. No one tried to stop me. This weekend, however, was different. This weekend was mine. It was mine and Chloe's. Our 1-year anniversary. She'd made reservations months ago at a restaurant I'd been dying to try, the kind with a 3-month waiting list and cocktails that smoke. We were going to stay at a boutique hotel downtown, sleep in order room service, and just be together without the static of the outside world. Without the static of my family. I was buzzing with it all day Friday. I left work a little early, picking up a bottle of champagne on the way home. Chloe was meeting me at my place. The plan was perfect. I just stepped out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, when my phone rang. The screen flashed Times, Mom, asterisk. A familiar knot of dread tightened in my stomach. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some stupid, deeply ingrained daughterly guilt made me swipe to answer. Hello? Harper, thank God. Her voice was a gust of manufactured panic. It was a tone she reserved for Mary-related dramas. I'm so glad I caught you. Hey, Mom. What's up? I was just getting ready to go out. I tried to sound breezy, dropping a hint. It was a wasted effort. Oh, you'll have to cancel that, she said, not as a suggestion, but as a statement of fact. We have a bit of a family emergency here. I closed my eyes. Is everyone okay? Are the babies okay? The babies are fine. They're perfect. It's your sister. And your father and me. We're at our breaking point, honey. We haven't had a single moment to ourselves. Mary is exhausted, completely overwhelmed, and we've been over there morning, noon, and night. I waited. I knew what was coming. The slow, methodical placement of the guilt, the careful construction of the trap. Your brother, of course, is swamped with that big project at work. You know how it is. He can't possibly get away. Of course. Leo, the man with the big project. He was always conveniently swamped. So she continued, her voice shifting, becoming bright and helpful, the sound of a problem being solved at my expense. We need you to come down for the weekend. Just tonight and tomorrow night. Your father and I need to take a breath, maybe just have one dinner where we aren't hearing a baby cry. And Mary could really use the help. You can sleep on her couch. It'll be a good chance for you to bond with your niece and nephew. The request hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Cancel my anniversary. Drive 2 hours. Sleep on a couch covered in spit up. Act as the free on-call help for the golden child doll so my parents could take a breath from the situation they gleefully enabled. She mistook my stunned silence for compliance. So, what time can we expect you? If you leave now, you could be here by 8. A laugh, dry and brittle, escaped my lips. No. The silence on the other end of the line was heavier than a tombstone. What did you say? My mother asked, her voice dangerously low. I said no, I can't come down this weekend. What do you mean you times can't times? Harper, this is family. This is an emergency. It's not my emergency, Mom, I said, the words feeling alien and powerful in my mouth. And I have plans. Really important plans that I'm not canceling. Plans, she spat the word like it was a piece of rotten fruit. What could possibly be more important than your sister who is drowning right now? What's so important? A date? Yes, actually, it is a date. The dam broke. A date, she repeated, her voice rising with incredulous fury. You are unbelievably, incredibly selfish. I can't believe this. We're all running on fumes, doing everything for Mary, and you can't be bothered to lift a finger because you have a date times. Do you even care about this family? Do you even care about your new niece and nephew? That was it. That was the line. The accusation so profoundly comically absurd that it severed the last thread of my restraint. A cold rage, clean and sharp, washed over me. Care? I asked, my voice chillingly calm. You want to talk about caring about this family? When was the last time you asked me a single question about my life and actually listened to the answer? Do you know what my boss's name is? Do you know what my apartment looks like? One you've never bothered to visit? That is not the point. No, it's the entire goddamn point, I was shouting, now the towel clutched tight in my fist. You ignore me for 23 years unless you need a placeholder or a free service. You left my college graduation early to get ahead of traffic, but Dad becomes a master carpenter to build Mary's nursery. You have no idea who I am. You have never ever cared, not really. The only selfish people here are the ones who demand my time, my money, and my life the second they remember I exist, and then dare to call times me, times selfish, for having one of my own. I was breathing hard, my heart hammering against my ribs. Harper, you are being hysterical and completely unfair. Am I? I laughed again, a harsh, ugly sound. You know what? You're right. Mary's overwhelmed. You're exhausted. So call the other person in this family you've spent a lifetime investing in. Call the golden child who can do no wrong. Call Leo. I didn't wait for a response. I jabbed the red icon on the screen, ending the call. The silence that followed was absolute. For a second, all I could hear was the frantic drumming of my own pulse. Then my phone lit up again. asterisk, mom, asterisk. I stared at it, then pressed the power button until the screen went black. I dropped the phone onto my bed like it was radioactive. My hands were shaking. A tremor ran through my whole body, a weird cocktail of adrenaline, fury, and a terrifying, exhilarating sense of freedom. The doorbell chimed. Chloe. My stomach plummeted. Our perfect anniversary weekend, and I was a wreck. I tightened the towel around me and padded to the door, peering through the peephole. It was her holding a bottle of champagne and smiling that incredible heart-stopping smile. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Her smile faltered the second she saw my face. Hey! You okay? You look like you just saw a ghost. I tried to force a smile. It came out as a grimace. Worse. My mother. I let her in, and the whole story just spilled out. The phone call, the demand Leo's free pass, the incredibly selfish comment, my final nuclear response. I paced my living room, still in my towel, gesticulating wildly as the words poured out of me. Chloe just listened. She set the champagne on the counter, took off her coat, and watched me, her expression patient and unreadable. When I finally ran out of steam, winding down with, and then I just hung up on her, she was quiet for a long moment. I hugged my arms around myself, a wave of sickness washing over me. I was horrible, wasn't I? She's 60 years old, I screamed at her. Mary just had twins, she's probably a mess, and I just... You just told the truth, Chloe, said her voice firm. She walked over and gently took my trembling hands in hers. Harper listened to me. Was it harsh? Maybe. But it sounds like it's been waiting to come out for 20 years. They put you in an impossible position and got angry when you didn't thank them for it. You're not horrible. You're human. Tears I hadn't even realized were there started to well up in my eyes. But I feel so guilty. I know, she said softly, pulling me into a hug. Her arms felt like an anchor. That's the guilt they installed in you. It's part of the system. But you didn't do anything wrong. You have a right to your own life. You have a right to this weekend. She was right. I knew she was right. And yet the knot of guilt in my stomach remained tangled up with a fierce, burning sense of justification. It was a dizzying combination. I felt both powerful and sick. My phone, which I'd turned back on, buzzed on the bed. A text from my dad. Asterisk. Your mother is very upset. You need to call her and apologize. Asterisk. I showed it to Chloe. She just shook her head. Nope. Not your mess to clean up. She was right again. I tossed the phone back on the bed face down. We went ahead with our night, but a shadow lingered. Even at the fancy restaurant with the smoky cocktails and food that tasted like art, I found my mind drifting. I'd catch myself replaying the conversation, my own voice echoing in my head. The righteous anger was still there, but so was the gnawing question times, did I go too far? Asterisk. Later, back in the plush hotel room, Chloe was asleep, her breathing soft and even beside me. The city lights glowed through the floor-to-ceiling window, but I couldn't sleep. The argument was on a loop in my brain. I felt so alone in it. No one else saw my family the way I did. To everyone else, they were probably a normal, loving unit. Was I the crazy one? Was I the selfish one? I quietly slipped out of bed and grabbed my laptop from my bag. Sitting in the dim glow of the screen, I opened a web browser, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I needed an outside opinion. An unbiased jury. I needed to know if I was the villain in my own story. I found the right forum, clicked Create Post, and started typing. Asterisk. Am I the asshole for refusing to provide last-minute free childcare for my golden child sister? And telling my mom why? Asterisk. I met Liam on a Tuesday. It was one of those nights I'd sworn off dating apps forever, only to re-download one out of sheer, soul-crushing boredom. His profile was sparse. A few pictures of him smiling on a hiking trail, another holding a giant fish. Liam, 32. Perth, Australia. A ridiculous 1,000 miles away. It was safe. It was a joke. I swiped right. He messaged me within minutes. Asterisk. Bit of a commute for a first date, asterisk. We didn't stop talking for the next 3 months. The time difference was brutal, but we made it work. I'd wake up to a string of good morning messages he'd sent before he went to bed. He'd get up in his afternoon to my goodnight video message. We existed in a strange, intimate bubble, completely detached from the rhythm of the real world. He was a geologist. He told me he worked long, lonely rotations in the outback, which was why his communication could be spotty during the day. It made sense. It also made our late-night video calls feel stolen and precious. He had this easy, crooked smile and a voice like warm gravel. The conversation was effortless until one night, about a month in, when he asked me why I was still single. Honestly, I said, pulling my blanket up to my chin. The last one did a number on me. We were engaged. I had a miscarriage. He left 2 weeks later. The words hung in the air between Chicago and Perth. I watched his face on my screen. His easy smile was gone. Izzy, he said, his voice soft. I get it. My fiancée Sarah, she lost our baby. It broke us. She said she couldn't look at me anymore without seeing what we'd lost. My heart cracked open. It was the secret ugly thing I carried around, the thing I thought no one could ever possibly understand. And here was this man a world away who had lived the exact same nightmare. We didn't just connect. We fused. We poured our grief into the space between us, and it turned into something else. Something that felt terrifyingly like hope. He started calling me his beautiful girl. He told me he was done with dating, that he'd been just going through the motions until he met me. This is it for me, Izzy. I know it. I've never felt anything like this, he'd say, his eyes locked on mine through the phone screen. I fell for him. Completely. He didn't have any social media. It was a red flag my friends were quick to point out. It's 2023, Izzy. Even my grandpa has Facebook, my best friend Maya said over brunch. But Liam had an explanation. A good one. It's toxic, babe, he explained on a call that night. After Sarah, I just deleted everything. All our pictures, all our mutual friends. It was a constant reminder. I just wanted a clean slate. A fresh start. For us. It made perfect sense. I'd done the same thing, purging my own digital life of my ex. Once again, our stories mirrored each other. Any red flag he had, he explained away with a piece of his tragic past that I shared. It was the perfect emotional camouflage. The relationship intensified. We were talking every day, hours at a time. He'd be in his blue work polo, the one with a little circular logo on the chest for a company called GeoCorp. He'd tell me about his day, the dust, the heat, the blokes on his crew. Then he'd ask about mine, listening patiently as I complained about my marketing job. Then came the I love yous. He said it first, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm falling in love with you, Isabella." I said it back without a second of hesitation. "I'm in love with you too, Liam." Soon love wasn't enough. We needed a plan. "I'm looking at flights," he said one morning, my time. He screen shared his laptop. Qantas, United Airlines. Perth to Chicago. "Liam, are you serious?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Never been more serious in my life," he said, his eyes shining. "I have a big chunk of leave saved up. I'm thinking December. I want to see you in the snow. I want to hold you. I need to know this is as real as it feels." It was happening. The dream was solidifying into a plane ticket and arrival date. My fantasy was about to walk out of my phone and into my apartment. We talked about all the things we'd do. Deep dish pizza. An architecture boat tour. Meeting my friends. He was going to stay for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. The next few days were a blur of giddy planning. He sent me a picture of his dog, a goofy-looking golden retriever with a black spot over his left eye. Asterisk, this is Bruce. He's gonna miss his dad, but I told him it's for a good cause. Asterisk. I saved the picture to my phone, my heart swelling. Bruce. We even had a dog. That Saturday, I was lounging on my couch, buzzing with excitement. I was so full of him, of us, that I just wanted more. I opened Instagram and, on a whim, typed his suburb Cottesloe into the location search. I wanted to see his world. The beach, he walked Bruce on the cafes he'd mentioned. I was just scrolling through the public photos, a silly smile on my face, picturing myself there with him. Sunsets. Surfers, lattes. Then I stopped. My breath caught in my throat. It was a photo of a golden retriever sitting on a pristine lawn. A golden retriever with a familiar distinctive black spot over its left eye. It was Bruce. The caption read, "My 2 favorite boys enjoying the sunshine." My thumb trembled as I tapped on the profile. It was public. The profile picture was of a smiling, beautiful blonde woman. I scrolled down her feed. More pictures of Bruce, pictures of the beach, and then a photo posted almost exactly 1 year ago. It was a wedding photo. The groom was Liam, beaming in a sharp blue suit. He was kissing the bride, the smiling blonde from the profile picture. And there, wrapped around her obviously pregnant stomach, was his hand. My phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto the hardwood floor. I didn't flinch. I just stared at the spot where it had been my vision blurring. A roaring sound filled my ears, the kind you get when you stand up too fast, except it wasn't fading. Pregnant. She was pregnant in the photo. My mind raced backward, calculating dates. The photo was a year old. Was she still pregnant? Had they had the baby? The math was a cruel stabbing knife. Their first anniversary was coming up. The same month, he was planning to fly to Chicago to start our life together. A wave of nausea washed over me. I scrambled for the phone, my fingers fumbling with the screen. His work shirt. The little logo. Geocorp. I typed Geocorp Perth Liam into Google. Nothing. I tried the last name from her Instagram profile. Liam. Wife's last name Geocorp. The first result was a LinkedIn profile. Liam, wife's last name. Senior geologist at Geocorp Resources, Perth, Western Australia. The profile picture was a professional headshot, the same crooked smile aimed at a corporate camera. It was him. It was all real, just not for me. My finger, acting of its own accord, hit the video call button on Snapchat. It was 3 a.m. His time. I didn't care. I hoped it woke them both up. He answered on the second ring, his face bleary with sleep, the screen illuminating a dark room. "Izzy, babe, what's wrong?" he whispered, his voice thick. I didn't say a word. I just turned my phone around, aiming my camera at my laptop screen, displaying his wedding photo in full glorious color. Him. His beautiful blonde wife. His hand on her pregnant stomach. I watched his face on my screen. Confusion flickered first, then dawning sickening horror. The blood drained from his face. He sat bolt upright. I could hear the rustle of sheets. "Izzy, wait," he stammered, his voice cracking. "I can't explain." "Can you?" My voice was flat, a stranger's voice. "Explain your wife. The one you married last year. Explain the baby." He crumpled. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't a denial. It was instantaneous disintegration. "Oh God," he choked out, burying his face in his hands. "Izzy, I am so sorry." "Is she in the bed next to you right now?" I asked the question, tasting like acid. He flinched. No, she's at her mom's. Izzy, please. Let me talk to you. I never meant for this to happen." "You never meant to construct an entire fictitious life that conveniently mirrored my deepest trauma to manipulate me. You never meant to tell me you loved me 100 times. You never meant to look up flights. It wasn't all a lie," he pleaded, tears now streaming down his face. "What I felt for you, that was real. It got out of control. Is your wife pregnant times now, asterisk?" He hesitated. The silence was the answer. "Yes," he whispered the word, barely audible. "She's due in 6 weeks." The final nail. I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. The grief was still there, but now it was encased in ice. "I am so sorry," he sobbed. "Please, Izzy. Don't tell her. It will destroy her. It will destroy everything." "My baby. Please." He looked right at the camera, his eyes wild with panic. "I'll do anything. I'll fix this. I'll delete everything." And just like that, the screen went black. A notification popped up times Liam is typing. Asterisk. Then nothing. His name on my friends list turned gray. He had deleted his Snapchat. Wiped the slate clean. He thought he could just press a button and make me and the last 3 months disappear into the digital ether. He didn't know me at all. I took a deep, steadying breath. I sat there for a minute, my heart a cold, hard stone in my chest. Then I went to my phone's photo gallery. I opened the folder I'd created last week, the one I'd hoped I would never need. I'd started to feel a prickle of unease when he'd booked his work trip to be away from cell service, the exact same weekend as his supposed wedding anniversary with his dead fiancée. A small lie, but it was a crack in the foundation. So I'd started screen recording. I'd press record, open Snapchat, and then play his latest video messages. My phone had captured it all. Me opening his snaps. His face clear as day, filling my screen. Asterisk. Good morning, my beautiful girl. I was dreaming about you all night. Asterisk. Asterisk. I cannot wait to get on that plane and hold you, Izzy. This is our beginning. Asterisk. Asterisk. I love you. More than I've ever loved anyone. Asterisk. And the pièce de résistance, a recording from 30 minutes ago. Me opening his final tearful video confession. His face contorted in a pathetic plea, admitting everything. He thought he had erased the evidence. All he had done was hand me the gun and the bullet. The debate in my head was short and brutal. A pregnant woman, a family about to be born. Could I be the one to light the match? But then I thought of him. Of the calculated, predatory way he'd used my own miscarriage, my own pain, as a key to unlock my heart. He didn't just lie. He wore my tragedy like a costume. He would do this again. The next lonely woman on a dating app. The next woman with a story just like mine. I wasn't protecting his wife by staying silent. I was protecting him. I went back to her Instagram profile. Her name was in her bio. Chloe. Of course, it was a lovely name. My fingers hovered over the message button. I typed deleted and retyped a dozen times before settling on something simple. Something that gave her all the power. Asterisk. Hi, Chloe. I know this is a bizarre message to receive, and I am so sorry to be the one sending it. My name is Isabella. For the past 3 months, I have been in an intense, long-distance relationship with your husband, Liam. He told me he was single. I have just found out that was a lie. I don't want to cause you pain, but I feel you have a right to know the truth. I have video proof of everything, including his confession. If you want to see it, please let me know. I am so sorry. Asterisk. I hit send. My whole body was shaking. I threw the phone on the couch as if it were on fire and paced my apartment for what felt like an eternity. 20 minutes later, it buzzed. A message from Chloe. Asterisk. Hi, Isabella. Thank you for telling me. I'm not entirely surprised. Please send me everything. Asterisk. Beneath it was her email address. Her kindness was more devastating than any anger could have been. I sat at my laptop and composed a new email. I didn't write a long story. The videos would speak for themselves. I just wrote Times, Chloe. Here is the proof. Again, I am so sorry. Izzy. Asterisk. I attached the 5 video files, the I love yous, the flight planning, the confession. My finger hovered over the send button. This was it. No going back. I clicked it. The email vanished from my outbox. I didn't expect to hear back right away. I figured she would need time. I made some tea, my hands still trembling, and sat on my couch in the pre-dawn Chicago light. I felt hollowed out, empty. An hour later, an email notification popped up. It was from her. Isabella. Asterisk. I've watched them all. Thank you. That is unquestionably him. I am so grateful you had the courage to do this. I need you to know this isn't your fault. He has a history of this, but I've never had undeniable proof before. I always let him convince me I was crazy. Now I have it. Asterisk. Asterisk. You've given me the truth. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but now I can do it with my eyes open. Thank you for not letting him get away with it. Asterisk. Chloe. I read the email 3 times. A wave of profound, aching relief washed over me. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't revenge. It was just closure. I had exposed a monster and armed a woman with the truth. Her future would be hard. She had a difficult road ahead. But it would be a future of her own making, free from his web of perfect poisonous lies. My part in their story was over. I deleted her email, his number, and every picture. Then, for the first time in 3 months, I turned off my phone and slept. It started with a pair of small hands on my back. A jolt, electric and cold, shot up my spine. My throat closed. The noise of my nephew's 7th birthday party, the shrieks of kids, the murmur of adults, the pop music from a portable speaker, all of it dissolved into a high-pitched ringing in my ears. I couldn't breathe. Another pair of hands, smaller, grabbed my waist. A child's giggle. Get her, a man's voice boomed thick with laughter. My brother-in-law, Mark. The golden child. Surprise attack on Aunt Hannah. My husband Leo was across the yard flipping burgers. He couldn't see the ice flooding my veins. He couldn't see the way the world was tilting the green of his mother's manicured lawn, turning a sickly gray. A third kid latched onto my leg. I was frozen a statue in a nightmare, the pressure of their hands a phantom echo of a night I spent my life trying to forget. I wrenched away, stumbling backward. A little girl, Mark's daughter, stared up at me, her face crumpling. I was just hugging you. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head, backing away, wrapping my arms around myself. Mark sauntered over, a beer in his hand. Whoa, take it easy. They're just kids having fun. You know not to do that, Mark. I finally managed to say, my voice a ragged whisper. You know I can't be grabbed from behind. His mother, Linda, materialized at his side, her face a mask of saccharine concern. Hannah, dear. Don't be so dramatic. You're scaring the children. He told them to do it, I said, pointing a shaking finger at Mark. He weaponized my trauma for a joke. Linda's smile tightened. It was a look I knew well, the one that said I was being difficult. Oh, honestly. You can't use your anxiety to be so controlling. It's a birthday party. We're all just trying to have a nice time. She patted Mark's arm. My son was just encouraging them to be affectionate. My son. Not times your brother-in-law, asterisk. My son. Leo was there then, spatula still in hand. Mom, what did you just say to her? Your wife is making a scene, Leo, Linda said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. She's manipulating the situation to make it all about her. Again. That was it. The final snap. I looked from Linda's placid, judgmental face to Mark's smug grin. They saw my PTSD not as a wound, but as a tool I used against them. A flaw to be mocked. We're leaving, I said to Leo, my voice flat and dead. Good, Mark muttered. Maybe now we can have some fun. The car ride was silent until we were halfway home. I'm done, I said, staring out the window at the passing houses. Leo, I am completely and totally done. No more holidays, no more birthdays, no contact. Leo reached over and took my hand. His was warm and steady. I know. I'm sorry, Han. I should have seen it coming. I'm with you. We're done. The relief was so immense it felt like I could finally take a full breath for the first time in years. 2 days later, my own mother called. Hannah, I just had the most bizarre conversation with Linda. My mom's voice was laced with confusion. She was crying. She said you had some kind of breakdown at the party, screamed at the children, and now you're refusing to speak to her. She's worried you're unstable. Triangulation. Classic Linda. Play the victim, sow doubt, isolate the target. Mom, I said, my voice dangerously calm. She's lying. And I need you to promise me you won't listen to her. We are no longer in contact with her or Mark. After I hung up, I walked straight to the spare bedroom. Linda had called it the nursery. For the last 2 years, she'd been filling it piece by piece with baby items we never asked for. A bassinet here, a box of gender-neutral onesies there. Each item was a little hook, a little piece of pressure. Asterisk. When are you giving me a grandchild? Don't you want to use this lovely changing table I bought? Asterisk. It was a room full of her expectations, her control. I spent the next 48 hours dismantling it. I listed the crib and the rocking chair on Marketplace. I packed 3 huge boxes of clothes and toys and dropped them at a women's shelter. I felt lighter with every item that left my house. I was scrubbing her influence out of my home, one unwanted baby gift at a time. The room was empty, clean. It was ours again. The silence lasted 3 weeks. It was the most peaceful 3 weeks of my marriage. Then I had a routine appointment with my endocrinologist. As I was leaving, I saw her car in the parking lot. A pristine white Lexus. Linda was walking into the same medical complex, her purse clutched in her hand. Our eyes met for a split second across the parking lot. A cold dread washed over me. The next day, a friend from yoga texted me. Asterisk. Oh my God, heard the news. Congrats, you two. So happy for you, asterisk. I stared at the text. Asterisk, what news times? I typed back. Asterisk. The baby. Someone saw you at the OBGYN clinic, asterisk. The endocrinologist was in the same building as the town's main OBGYN practice. Linda hadn't just seen me. She'd seen an opportunity. The rumor spread like a wildfire in our small town. Congratulations at the grocery store. Winks from neighbors. It was humiliating, and I knew exactly who lit the match. The escalation came 2 days later. I was at work, a small architectural firm on Main Street, when the front door chime rang. I glanced up from my drafting table. It was Linda. She breezed past our bewildered receptionist and marched straight to my desk. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and urgent. "There is nothing to talk about," I said, keeping my eyes on my computer screen. "You need to leave. This is my workplace. Don't be ridiculous, Hannah. I am not leaving until you listen to me. You can't just cut a grandmother out of her grandchild's life." My head snapped up. "There is no grandchild. I know you're pregnant." "I saw you," she hissed. "Do you think I'm stupid? This is my grandchild, and you will not keep me from them." My boss stepped out of his office. "Is there a problem here?" Linda's face instantly softened into a mask of maternal concern. "Oh, no, not at all. I was just dropping something off for my daughter. Hormones, you know." She winked at my boss. I wanted to vomit. She left, but the assault wasn't over. When Leo and I got home that evening, we couldn't even get to our front door. The porch was completely blocked. Stacked high were dozens of boxes and unwrapped gifts. A brand new top-of-the-line stroller still in its packaging. An unassembled crib identical to the one I'd just sold. A mountain of gift bags from Bye Bye Baby overflowing with tiny outfits, blankets, and stuffed animals, but this time it wasn't gender neutral. Half the pile was aggressively blue little baseball-themed onesies, miniature jeans, blankets that said Mommy's Little Slugger. The other half was a sickening wave of pink dresses with frills, headbands with giant bows, a pink floral diaper bag. It was a statement. A siege. It was her way of saying, "Times I know you're pregnant, and I don't care what you want. I will be a part of this one way or another." Asterisk. I stood on the sidewalk staring at the pastel barricade she had erected around my home. My sanctuary. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from a number I didn't have saved but knew instantly. Asterisk. "Hope you like everything. Just a little something to get you started. We need to talk about the baby shower. XOXO, Mom." Asterisk. I didn't say a word. I just walked back to the car, opened the trunk, and started grabbing the empty boxes I'd used for the donations. Leo followed, his face grim. He understood immediately. There would be no argument, no screaming match over the phone. Just action. We worked in silence under the setting sun, a grim, efficient team. We packed every frilly dress, every tiny baseball mitt, every single unwanted gift back into boxes. We loaded the stroller and the crib into Leo's truck. It took over an hour. When we were done, my porch was clear and his truck was full. "Are you ready?" he asked, his hand on my back, gentle, supportive. "Let's finish this," I said. We drove to their house, the house I swore I'd never go to again. Leo pulled his truck right up the driveway, blocking Linda's Lexus. I got out, walked to the front door, and rang the bell. Linda opened it, a triumphant smirk on her face. "I knew you'd come to your senses. Did you decide on a theme for the shower I was thinking?" "Unpack the truck?" I said, my voice as flat and cold as a slab of marble. Her smirk faltered. "What?" "Every item you left on my porch is in the back of Leo's truck. You have 5 minutes to take it all back." Her face hardened. "Don't be absurd, Hannah. That's for my grandchild." "There is no grandchild," I repeated, stepping closer. I broke my one rule. I met her eyes. "And this is not a negotiation. It is a notification. You will stop all contact. You will stop all gifts. You will stop talking about me, or to anyone who knows me. If one more package arrives, if one more text is sent, if your name so much as appears on my phone again, we will file for a restraining order. We are finished." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. She was searching for a weakness, a crack she could wedge her manipulation into, but she found none. The part of me that used to crave her approval was gone, burned away at a 7th birthday party. "You ungrateful little bitch," she finally hissed. "After everything I've done for you?" I turned and walked away. I didn't have to hear the rest. Leo was already at the back of his truck, tipping the first box of pink and blue onto her pristine manicured lawn. He didn't wait for her to help. He just started unloading our life from hers, piece by piece, dumping it in a pile on the grass. By the time I got back in the car, he was sliding the crib out. We drove away as the pieces clattered onto her driveway. The fallout was nuclear. It wasn't a call from Linda that came next, or from Mark. It was from Leo's dad, David. He called 2 days later, his voice heavy. "Leo, I'm at a hotel. I've left your mother." We were both stunned into silence. David had always been a passive observer, a man who navigated his wife's moods by making himself as small as possible. "Dad, what happened?" Leo asked. "I saw it all," David said, his voice cracking. "I came home and saw the pile on the lawn. She had a complete breakdown. Screaming about Hannah, about the baby, about how she was going to ruin you both. It wasn't sane, son. And then she told me what she'd done. The rumors. Harassing her at work. For years I told myself she was just difficult. But this is sick. I can't live in it anymore. I won't." Linda's carefully constructed world was beginning to implode. But it wasn't over. Her next target was the one person she still had control over, Leo's 14-year-old sister, Chloe. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Linda's primary weapon was Chloe. She painted David as an abandoning, cruel husband, and me as the home-wrecking villain who had turned her perfect family against her. She poured every ounce of her poison into Chloe's ear. We started to see the effects during David's visitation weekends. Chloe, once a bubbly, funny kid, became withdrawn and sullen. She barely ate. She'd push food around her plate, her eyes hollow. She lost weight at an alarming rate. One Sunday, David called us frantic. She collapsed. "We're at the hospital. The doctors, they're saying it's an eating disorder. A severe one." That's when the court stepped in. A guardian ad litem was assigned to Chloe. Therapists were brought in. And under the careful professional eye of a court-appointed psychologist, the truth of Linda's mothering came to light. It wasn't just about the divorce. It was a lifetime of psychological and emotional abuse. Of Linda controlling Chloe's food intake to keep her slender, of criticizing her grades, of comparing her constantly to Mark, the golden child who could do no wrong. Linda's obsession with control hadn't started with me. I was just her newest project. The therapist's report was damning. It detailed a pattern of narcissistic abuse, emotional manipulation, and medical neglect. It painted a picture of a woman so desperate to control her family's image that she was literally starving her own daughter. Linda lost everything. The judge awarded David full custody of Chloe. Linda was granted supervised visitation twice a month, contingent on her attending mandatory therapy. She refused. She lost her marriage, she lost her daughter, and she lost the fictional grandchild she had been so desperate to possess. Mark, her perfect son, was too busy defending his own enabling behavior to offer her any real support. She was alone in her perfect house, with her perfect lawn, completely and utterly isolated by the consequences of her own actions. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the tense, temporary quiet of a ceasefire. It was peace. Real, deep, foundational peace. Chloe moved in with her dad, and with intensive therapy and a family that was finally safe, she began to heal. We formed a new family unit, me, Leo, David, and Chloe. We had quiet dinners. We went for hikes. We built something new from the rubble. About 6 months later, on a quiet Tuesday morning, I was standing in our bathroom staring at 2 pink lines on a plastic stick. They were faint, but they were undeniably there. I walked into the living room where Leo was reading on the couch. I sat down next to him and just handed him the test. He looked at it, then at me, his eyes wide. "For real this time?" he whispered. I nodded, a slow, genuine smile spreading across my face for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. For real this time. There would be no grand announcements, no unwanted gifts, no pressure. There would only be us. This child, our child, would be born not into a war zone, but into a fortress of love and safety we had fought tooth and nail to build. And in the quiet of our home, that felt like the greatest victory of all. My stepmother Diane fancies herself an event planner. In reality, she's a control freak with a penchant for beige and a history of turning every family gathering into a hostage situation. So when I proposed to Jane, I knew we were in for a fight. "She just emailed the caterer," Jane said, her voice flat. She held her phone out to me, the screen glowing in the dim light of our living room. She sent them a suggested menu. "It's all gluten-free, dairy-free, fun-free." I scanned the list. Quinoa salad, steamed asparagus, poached salmon. It was a menu for people who hate joy. I'll handle it. That's become my motto for the last 6 months, times I'll handle it. Asterisk. Handling it meant calling my father and explaining for the 10th time that this was our wedding, not Diane's retirement party. And my dad, bless his conflict-averse heart, would sigh and say, "Ben, you know how she is. She just wants to be involved." Involved is one thing, Dad. Hijacking is another. Just let her have her little suggestions. It keeps the peace. Keeping the peace was my father's life mission, a goal he pursued by sacrificing everyone else's peace on the altar of Diane. Jane and I aren't complicated. We have our little family, and it's all we need. There's me, her, our 10-month-old son, Leo, and Luke. Luke is Jane's half-brother. He's 4 years old, a whirlwind of dinosaur facts and sticky fingers. His mom, Jane's stepmom, passed away 2 years ago, and his dad took off. Jane, who was only 21 at the time, stepped up and got custody. When I met her, they were a package deal. It was the best deal I ever made. That kid is my son in every way that matters. Diane, however, sees it differently. She once told my aunt that Jane had baby-trapped me with someone else's kid. The logic is baffling, but hatred doesn't need logic. To her, Luke is a symbol of a life she can't control. He's the living, breathing proof that our family was formed without her input, and she can't stand it. Her meddling escalated weekly. She tried to change our venue, claiming the rustic barn we'd booked was a splinter factory. She tried to bully Jane's mom into changing the color of the bridesmaid dresses to, you guessed it, beige. Each time I'd call my dad. Each time I'd get the same response. She means well, Ben. No, she doesn't. She told Jane that Luke looks unruly and shouldn't be in the wedding party. He's 4, Dad. He's the ring bearer. A long pause on his end. Well, you know weddings are stressful. People say things they don't mean. She meant it. The battle lines were drawn. On one side, me, Jane, and our kids. On the other, Diane and her army of flying monkeys, with my dad acting as her willing, spineless collaborator. The worst part was watching what it did to Jane. She was a rock, but even rocks erode under a constant drip of poison. I'd see her scrolling through venues on her phone late at night, a little crease of worry between her eyebrows. What if we just eloped? She whispered one night as Leo slept soundly in his crib next to our bed. And let her win. No chance, I said, pulling her close. This is our day. Our family. She doesn't get a vote. 2 weeks before the wedding, the new offensive began. Diane started circulating a different hotel block to my side of the family, one closer to her favorite salon. Then she called my best man, my oldest friend, to suggest he plan a more sophisticated bachelor party for me instead of the camping trip we'd had planned since we were teenagers. She's trying to divide and conquer, Jane said, pacing the kitchen while Luke chased our cat around the table. She's creating her own version of the wedding and hoping people show up to that one instead. I finally lost it. I called my dad, my voice tight with a rage I'd been swallowing for months. You have to get her under control. This stops now. Benjamin, your tone is completely unnecessary. My tone. She's actively sabotaging our wedding. She's hurting Jane. She's insulting my son. Now, hold on, he said, his voice dropping into that placating murmur I hated. She's just passionate. She feels left out. If you'd just given her one little thing to be in charge of, the one little thing she wants is control of everything, including our kids. And that's not on the table. It will never be on the table. Are we clear? He huffed. Fine. I'll talk to her. It was the same empty promise he always made. A verbal pat on the head to shut me up. But for a few days there was silence. A fragile, unnerving peace. We had our final tux fitting, picked up the rings, and went over the seating chart. For a moment it felt like we might actually make it. Then, Friday afternoon, our babysitter called. Her daughter had a sudden fever, a nasty one. She was apologetic, but she couldn't come. And we couldn't cancel. It was our final meeting with the officiant, the last thing on our checklist. "My mom's in Ohio until tomorrow," Jane said, chewing on her thumbnail. "Your aunt is at work." We ran through the list. Friends, neighbors. No one was available on such short notice. My stomach sank as I realized there was only one option left. "No," Jane said immediately, reading my face. "Ben, no. Not after everything." "It would just be for 2 hours," I pleaded already, hating myself. "Leo will be napping most of the time, and Luke can just watch his cartoons." "I'll call him. I'll make it crystal clear that Diane is not to come over. Under any circumstances. He owes us this. He owes times me times this." Jane looked from me to Luke, who was happily building a lopsided tower of blocks. Her eyes were filled with a deep primal mistrust that I should have listened to. But I was tired. I was desperate. I just wanted this one last thing to be easy. "Please, Janie. It'll be fine, I promise." She finally gave a reluctant nod, the doubt still etched on her face. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over my dad's contact photo. A wave of pure dread washed over me, cold and heavy. It was the kind of feeling you get right before you walk into a dark room where you know something is waiting. I ignored it. I pressed the button. "Hey, Dad," I said, forcing a cheerful tone. "I've got a huge favor to ask." The silence on the drive home was heavier than any argument. 2 hours. That's all it was. We pulled into the driveway, and I could hear it through the closed car door, Leo's frantic, gasping cry. Not his usual hungry cry, but the sound of pure distress. "Something's wrong," Jane said, already unbuckling. I was out of the car before she was fumbling with my keys at the front door. The moment I opened it, the wail hit me full force. But it wasn't just Leo. From the living room came a second sound. A choked, terrified sobbing that ripped my heart out. It was Luke. We found them in a heap of misery. My dad was pacing, wringing his hands, while Diane was there. Her face, a mask of pinched fury, stood over the playpen where Leo was screaming himself red. Luke was huddled on the couch, knees to his chest, his face buried in a cushion. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded. "I told you she wasn't to come over." "Benjamin, calm down." My dad started his hands up in a placating gesture. There was a little disagreement. Jane ignored them completely. She swept past them straight to Luke. "Luke, honey, what is it? What's wrong?" He turned his head, and I saw it. A dark red split on his bottom lip, already starting to swell. A raw, angry mark on his small face. The world went quiet. All I could hear was a ringing in my ears. I looked from Luke's lip to Diane's face. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "What did you do?" My voice was dangerously low. "He was being a monster," she snapped, her voice shrill. "He got overexcited about the wedding, throwing pillows, and I had to get him to calm down." "Get him to calm down." Jane's voice was pure ice. She was cradling Luke's head, her thumb stroking his hair. "His lip is bleeding." "He fell," my dad mumbled. "He was jumping on the couch and he fell." "Liar," I said, looking straight at him. The word hung in the air, ugly and absolute. I turned back to Diane. "You hit him." "Don't be ridiculous," she scoffed. "I would never." "She called me not family," Luke whispered into Jane's shoulder, his little body trembling. "She said, 'I can't be the ring bear.'" Rage, cold and clean, flooded my veins. It was so clarifying. All the months of placating, of handling it, burned away in an instant. There was no more gray area. There was only my son, hurt and terrified, and the monster who did it. "Get out," I said to Diane. She opened her mouth to argue, but the look on my face must have stopped her. "Get out of my house, now!" I took a step toward her, and for the first time in her life I saw genuine fear in her eyes. She grabbed her purse and scurried out the door. Then I turned to my father. He looked pathetic, deflated. "Ben, she didn't mean it. She just has a temper. And you just let it happen," I finished for him. "You stood here and let her hurt a 4-year-old child. My son, get out, Dad. And don't come back." He flinched as if I'd slapped him. "You don't mean that." "I have never met anything more in my life. You are not welcome here." He left, closing the door softly behind him, the sound of it an admission of his own cowardice. The house was suddenly quiet, save for our children's ragged breaths. Jane was murmuring to Luke, wiping his tears, while I finally went and lifted Leo from his pen, his small body hot and damp against my chest. We held our kids. We just held them. After a few minutes, Jane looked up at me, her eyes glistening. "The nanny cam," she whispered. I'd forgotten all about it. The little camera we kept on the mantelpiece to check on the kids. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking as I opened the app and rewound the footage to an hour ago. We didn't watch. We listened. First, Diane's voice, saccharine and false. Then Luke's excited chatter about his special job as the ring bearer. Then Diane's tone shifted. Asterisk. That's not your job. You're not real family. You're just a problem your sister got stuck with. Asterisk. Luke's confused, hurt little voice. Asterisk. Yes, I am. Ben's my dad. Asterisk. Asterisk. He is not your father, times a shriek. Then a smacking sound, sharp and sickening, followed instantly by Luke's agonized cry. I closed the app. Jane was openly weeping now, a silent, furious grief. I saved the video file to my phone and then to the cloud. There was no question. There was no debate. We're going to the pediatrician in the morning, I said, my voice hard as stone, to get his lip documented. Then we're going to the police. The doctor was gentle, his face a careful professional blank as he examined Luke's mouth and took pictures. It's a good thing you brought him in, he said, handing Luke a sticker. Having a record of this is important. From there, we drove to the police station. It felt surreal sitting in a sterile room explaining to a tired-looking officer why my stepmother had assaulted my son. I played him the audio from my phone. I saw the officer's expression harden. He took our statement, a copy of the video file, and the pediatrician's report. You've done the right thing, he said. A detective will be in touch. We walked out into the sunlight, feeling hollowed out but certain. When we got home, my phone rang. It was my father. I just got a call from Diane. She was visited by a police officer. What in God's name did you do, Benjamin? His voice wasn't concerned. It was accusatory. I reported a crime, I said flatly. Child abuse. Child abuse. For God's sake, she tapped him on the mouth. You're tearing this family apart over a spoiled brat's tantrum. You need to call them, drop these charges, and apologize to Diane. She is your mother. She is not my mother. And I will see her in court before I ever see her at my wedding. She's uninvited. Officially. You can't do that. If she's not welcome, then neither am I, he blustered. I know, I said. I already told you that. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up before he could respond and blocked his number. Then I blocked Diane's. The fallout was immediate. A cascade of texts and calls from aunts, uncles, cousins. The story had already been spun times Ben and Jane are overreacting. Luke is a difficult child. Diane just lost her patience for a moment. They're trying to ruin her life over nothing. Asterisk. I didn't argue. I didn't engage. I sent the same simple message to every single person who contacted me in her defense. Asterisk. Diane put her hands on my 4-year-old son, splitting his lip because she was angry he was in our wedding. We have this on video. We have a doctor's report. We have filed a police report. The narrative you're hearing is a lie designed to protect an abuser. If you choose to side with her, that is your right. But you will not be a part of our lives or our children's lives. We are done. Asterisk. The responses dwindled. Some went silent. A few sent back angry tirades. My aunt called me a monster for putting my father through this. I blocked her too. Each block was a click of a lock securing the walls of our home. That evening, Jane's mom and stepdad came over. They brought pizza and played dinosaurs with Luke until he was laughing again, the cut on his lip the only reminder of yesterday. Later, after the kids were asleep, Jane and I sat on the porch. The guest list for the wedding was now about 30 people lighter. Are you okay? She asked, her hand finding mine in the dark. I've never been better, I said, and I meant it. The weight of my father's expectations of Diane's endless drama, it was just gone. We lost a lot of people today. No, she said, squeezing my hand. We didn't lose anything. We just trimmed the fat. I looked at her at the fierce, protective love in her eyes and knew she was right. Our wedding wasn't going to be the big beige-colored affair Diane had wanted. It was going to be smaller, quieter. But it was going to be ours. And everyone there would be there because they loved our family, all of it. Unconditionally. Some days you just know you've won. For me, that day was about 6 months ago. I was sitting in my office, the one with the big glass window overlooking the whole operation, and I was watching them. My son John and his best friend Sam. They were standing over a blueprint on the hood of a dusty pickup, arguing, laughing, pointing. John sharp in his collared shirt, waving his tablet around, crunching the numbers. Sam's sleeves rolled up a pencil behind his ear, talking about load-bearing walls and supply chain. They were a perfect machine. My machine. And I thought times, this is it. This is everything I ever worked for. Asterisk. Miller Construction wasn't born in a boardroom. It was born in the back of my beat-up Ford with a second-hand circular saw and a toolbox my dad gave me. I built it with sweat and sawdust. By the time John was in high school, it was a respectable local business. I gave him a summer job, figuring it was time he learned the value of a hard day's work. He lasted 3 weeks. "Dad, this sucks," he told me one night, smelling of concrete dust and teenage indignation. "I'm covered in dirt, my back hurts, and Tony yelled at me for dropping a box of screws." Tony yells at everyone, John. It's how he says hello. And it's a construction site, you're supposed to get dirty. "It's not for me," he'd said, and that was that. He quit. I was disappointed, sure, but you can't force a kid to love the thing you love. The next day he brought Sam around. "Hey, Mr. Miller," Sam said, looking nervous but determined. "John said, you guys might have an opening. I'll do anything. Sweep, floors, carry, lumber, whatever." Sam was different. John's family had money, not my money, his mother's side. They were doctors and lawyers. Sam's dad was a mechanic who'd been laid off. Sam had a hunger I recognized because I saw it in the mirror every morning. So I hired him. And he didn't just sweep floors. He asked questions, he watched, he learned. He stayed late, came in early. While John was off getting a business degree from some fancy university, Sam was getting a master's in Miller Construction. He became the son I never had. No, that's not fair. He became the second-time son I didn't know I needed. He was there for the big expansion, the first multi-million-dollar contract, the time the whole market nearly collapsed in '08. 15 years he never wavered. He was my right hand, my successor in everything but name. Then, about 3 years ago, the prodigal son returned. John, 30 years old with a shiny MBA, and a few years at a sterile accounting firm under his belt, walked into my office. "Dad, I'm ready to come home," he announced. My wife Sarah was ecstatic. "Our boy finally seeing sense," she'd said. I was more cautious, but I was hopeful. He wasn't a kid anymore. He was a man. I gave him a job in finance, figuring it was a good fit for his degree. I expected him to treat it like a stepping stone, a corner office he was entitled to. I was wrong. He was brilliant. He streamlined our billing, renegotiated our loans, and found inefficiencies I hadn't seen in 30 years. He had a head for numbers that was frankly terrifying. And he got along with Sam. Better than got along. They'd been friends since kindergarten, and that bond was still there. They fell back into their old rhythm, but now it was in the context of my company. Our biggest client, a developer building a massive retail complex, was getting cold feet about costs. I brought John and Sam to the meeting. I watched them work. Sam would lay out the operational plan, his calm confidence soothing the client's fears about delays. "We can have the foundation poured in 6 weeks, frame up in 12. My guys are the best." Then John would step in with his tablet swiping through spreadsheets. "And I've run the numbers. If we pre-order the steel from this supplier instead of our usual one, we can hedge against the price increase we're projecting for Q3. It saves you 7%. Right here." They were a 1-to-2 punch of practicality and precision. We walked out of that meeting with the contract signed and a bigger budget than we'd walked in with. In the truck on the way back, I slapped the dashboard. "Damn fine work, you two. Damn fine." John grinned from the passenger seat. "We make a good team, Dad." From the back, Sam added, "Couldn't have done it without the numbers guy." It was perfect. It was a family business. My son, my protege, my legacy. For 3 years, it was like that. The company grew, profits soared. I was 58 years old, and for the first time I felt like I could actually breathe. I could step away. The machine I built would keep on running without me. So, I made my decision. Sarah helped me plan the dinner. She knew something was up. "You've got that look," she said. "The one you get when you're about to do something drastic." "It's not drastic, it's just time," I told her. We had everyone over. John, my daughter, Susan, who's a teacher and wants nothing to do with the business, and her husband. And Sam. Sam was always there for family dinners. The mood was light. We drank good wine. We laughed about old times. John told a story about him and Sam trying to build a treehouse that nearly fell on my prize-winning roses. Everyone was happy, relaxed. The perfect moment. After dessert, I tapped my glass with a fork. The chatter died down. Everyone looked at me smiling, expectant. "I have an announcement to make." I began my voice a little thicker than I expected. "As you all know, I'm not getting any younger. I've spent my life building this company, and it's time for me to finally step back. It's time to pass the torch." I looked around the table, at Susan, who was just happy for me, at Sarah, her eyes glistening with pride, at John, who was leaning forward, a confident, knowing smile playing on his lips. He thought he knew what was coming. I took a deep breath. I've spent months figuring out the best way to do this. The best way to ensure the future of Miller Construction and to be fair to everyone who has poured their life into it. I raised my glass, looking directly across the table past my own son. So it is with immense pride that I announce that the new majority owner and CEO of Miller Construction will be Sam. The silence in the room was a physical thing, heavy and cold. Sam's face went white, a statue carved from chalk. John's confident smile didn't just vanish. It shattered. He stared at me, his eyes wide with a disbelief so pure it was almost childlike. "To finish," I said, trying to push through the sudden tension, "the remaining 40% will be split evenly between my children. 20% for you, John, and 20% for you, Susan." John made a noise, a choked-off laugh that sounded like tearing metal. "You're kidding me." He looked at Sam, then back at me. "This is a joke. A really, really sick joke." "It's not a joke, John," I said, my voice firm. "It's a business decision." A business decision. He shot to his feet, the legs of his chair scraping violently against the hardwood floor. His napkin fell to the floor. "I have an MBA from Wharton. I saved you 7 figures last year alone." He swung a hammer. "You're giving times my times. Company, my birthright to the goddamn help." The word help hung in the air, ugly and venomous. Sam flinched like he'd been slapped. "That's enough," I said, my own anger rising to meet his. "Sam has given 15 years of his life to this company. He was here when you decided carrying lumber was beneath you. He built this with me. He earned it." "Earned it," John's voice cracked. "He earned my father's company. My grandfather's name is on the side of those trucks." "What did he earn?" "Your loyalty? Is that what this is?" You love him more than me, so you're giving him my life." Sarah put her hand on my arm. "Levi, please, not like this." I shook her off. "This isn't about love. It's about respect. It's about who has the experience and the dedication to run the whole operation, not just the balance sheets. Sam knows this business inside and out, from the foundation to the rooftop. You've been here for 3 years. 3 years of fixing your antiquated systems. 3 years of turning your glorified local crew into a modern, profitable enterprise." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "I came home for you. For this. I thought we were building this together. Turns out I was just an employee auditioning for a minority stake in my own family's company while the golden boy was already anointed." He looked at Sam, his expression curdling into something I'd never seen before, pure hatred. "You knew, didn't you, all those late nights with him going over plans? You knew he was going to screw me over." "No, John, I swear," Sam stammered, holding up his hands. He looked utterly lost. "I had no idea. Mr. Miller? Levi? I can't accept this." "The decision is made, Sam," I said, cutting him off. That was the final straw. John threw his hands up in defeat. "Unbelievable. You won't even listen to him." It was never a choice. He grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. "Congratulations, Dad. You finally got the son you always wanted." He didn't look at his mother. He didn't look at his sister. He just walked to the front door, yanked it open, and slammed it shut behind him. The vibration rattled the wine glasses on the table. The celebratory dinner was over. The next 3 days were a new kind of hell. A quiet, suffocating one. John didn't answer my calls. He didn't answer Sarah's. He'd sent a single curt email to HR announcing he was taking an indefinite leave of absence. The office felt like a morgue. Sam walked around like a ghost, his face etched with guilt and misery. He tried to talk to me twice. "Levi, we have to fix this," he'd said. "I don't want the company if it costs you your son." "It's not on you, Sam." I told him, though the words felt hollow even to me. The perfect machine I'd admired just a few days earlier was broken, its gears grinding to a halt. The joy of my impending retirement had curdled into a constant churning anxiety in my gut. I sat in my office staring out the big glass window, but the sight of the bustling workyard brought me no comfort. All I saw was the empty parking space where John's car should have been. On the 4th day, Susan showed up at the house. Sarah let her in, and the two of them spoke in hushed tones in the kitchen before Susan came into the study where I was pretending to read the newspaper. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "He's a wreck, Dad." "He's not answering my calls," I said, folding the paper. "What am I supposed to do?" "Maybe try to understand what you did," she shot back, her tone sharper than usual. She sat in the leather chair opposite my desk. "You publicly humiliated him. You held a dinner to celebrate his replacement. I was celebrating the future of the company. A company he is still getting 20% of for doing absolutely nothing." "Oh, stop it," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "You know this isn't about the money." "Not for John. This is about Sam." I leaned back confused. "What does Sam have to do with it? He's innocent in all this." Susan sighed a deep, weary sound. Dad, for as long as I can remember, you've talked about Sam. Sam just made foreman. Sam closed the Henderson deal. Sam reminds me of me when I was his age. You sent him to John's high school graduation because you were stuck on a job site too. States away. Do you have any idea what that does to a kid? The memory hit me like a physical blow. The concrete pour had gone wrong. I'd had to stay. I sent Sam in my place, told him to film the whole thing. At the time it seemed practical, a necessary sacrifice. John feels like he's been in a competition his whole life with his own best friend. Susan continued, her voice softening slightly. A competition he was always losing. He came home, he got the fancy degree you always said you wished you had. He worked his ass off for you for 3 years. He thought he'd finally won. He thought he'd finally made you proud. She leaned forward. That night, at dinner, you didn't just give Sam the company. You told John that he was right all along. That Sam was the son you always wanted, and he was just the backup. His birthright didn't matter. His degree didn't matter. He didn't matter. The words landed one by one, each finding a chink in my armor of logic and pragmatism. I had seen it as a business decision, a clean succession based on merit. I'd completely missed the emotional carnage. I hadn't just passed over my son. I had validated his deepest insecurity. He wants to meet Susan, said, pulling me from my thoughts. Just the two of you, lunch tomorrow. The diner on Main. Hope, fragile and unwelcome, flickered in my chest. He does. Don't get excited, she warned. He's still furious. But he's willing to talk to you. No lawyers, no Sam, no Mom, just you and him. She stood up to leave. And Dad, for God's sake, just listen to him. After she left, I walked over to my desk. The succession papers were in a neat pile right where I'd left them. Everything was drafted, just waiting for a few signatures to make it all real. My logical, pragmatic, defensible plan. A plan that had secured the future of my business, but had possibly shattered my family forever. I picked up the heavy stack of paper, the weight of it feeling immense in my hands. Tomorrow, I was having lunch with my son. And I had no idea if I was going to a negotiation or a final execution. I cannot stress this enough, Danielle, Mr. Abernathy said, his voice a low drone that sucked the air out of his stuffy office. Robert was explicit. Trust me. Run every significant financial decision by me. He slid the final binder across the mahogany expanse of his desk. It was heavy bound in dark blue leather and felt like an anchor. $7.2 million. I stared at the number on the top page, but it didn't feel real. None of this felt real. Robert, my husband of 25 years, the sensible, meticulous doctor who charted everything from our monthly budget to his own vital signs, was gone. And he had left his entire world in the hands of this man who smelled of mothballs and condescension. Robert's ghost sat in the third leather chair, speaking through his lawyer. Asterisk. Be careful, Donnie. Don't be impulsive. Asterisk. I gave Abernathy a tight smile. I understand, Bill. Thank you. My daughter Chloe sat beside me, her knee bouncing with a restless energy that filled the room. At 18, she was a bolt of lightning, a perfect fusion of my spontaneity and Robert's sharp intellect. She grabbed my hand under the table and squeezed. The moment we stepped out onto the rain-slicked pavement, she exhaled. "Okay, Mom, Malibu." It wasn't a question. It was a declaration. For years it had been our shared dream, a fantasy we'd whisper about while Robert was on call. A house on the sand with floor-to-ceiling windows and the sound of the ocean as our alarm clock. Robert always dismissed it. "A money pit, Danny. An asset that consumes instead of grows." He'd preferred solid, boring index funds and the brick colonial in Pasadena that had been a sensible investment 30 years ago. "Chloe, honey, your father just—" "Dad would want you to be happy," she said, her eyes fierce. "He worked his entire life so you wouldn't have to worry. What's the point of all that money if you're just going to sit in that dark, quiet house and be miserable?" She was right. The house was a museum of a life that was over. Every corner held a memory that now felt like a wound. 2 weeks later, I was signing the papers. I didn't just sell the Pasadena house. I gutted our life there, selling decades of memories in a 3-day estate sale that left me feeling hollow and strangely free. The proceeds, combined with a hefty chunk of the liquid assets, went straight into a glass and stucco palace perched over the Pacific. I called Abernathy to tell him. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy with disapproval. "You did what he finally managed." "I bought a house, Bill. It's beautiful." "Danielle, that is the single most irresponsible. Did you even look at the comps, the carrying costs? The property tax on a home like that is 6 figures. Asterisk. Per year, asterisk." "I can afford it," I snapped, the defensiveness creeping into my voice. "Robert left me more than enough." "He left you enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life, provided you didn't set it on fire," he yelled. I could practically feel the spittle hitting his phone. This is exactly what he was afraid of. "Bring the paperwork to my office tomorrow. We need to see if we can get you out of this disaster." Something inside me snapped. For 25 years I had deferred to Robert's caution. I had been the sensible doctor's wife. I was done being managed. "You work for me now, Bill," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "And I'm telling you the deal is done. If you can't support my decisions, I'll find a lawyer who can." I hung up before he could respond, my heart hammering. I told myself it was empowerment. It felt a lot like terror. The first 6 months were a blur of sun-drenched euphoria. Chloe and I hosted parties where champagne flowed like water. We bought designer clothes and a gleaming white convertible. We were living the dream. But the dream had an insatiable appetite. The first property tax bill arrived like a punch to the gut. Abernathy was right. It was obscene. Then came the landscaper, the pool maintenance, the ocean air mitigation expert who explained that salt was actively corroding my house from the outside in. Every month, tens of thousands of dollars evaporated just to keep the palace standing. The market took a dip. The value of my remaining stocks, the ones Abernathy had so carefully curated, withered. Panic began to set in a cold dread that the ocean breeze couldn't blow away. That's when I met Julian. He was everything Bill Abernathy wasn't, young, slick, and dressed in a suit so sharp it could cut glass. A friend from the country club introduced us. Julian didn't talk about sensible growth. He talked about aggressive leveraging and disruptive tech. He made me feel stupid for letting my money just sit there in those boring old funds. "You're asset rich, Danielle," he'd said over a $200 lunch I paid for. "We just need to make those assets work for you." I liquidated the rest of Robert's portfolio and handed it over to Julian. I ignored the screaming voice in my head that sounded exactly like my late husband. I fired Abernathy in a curt email severing the last tie to Robert's pragmatism. For a month it worked. My new portfolio soared. I felt like a genius. I bragged to Chloe that I'd made more in 4 weeks than her father's stuffy old lawyer had in a year. Then came the crash. It wasn't a dip. It was a cliff. Julian's disruptive tech stock turned out to be a fraudulent house of cards. His leveraged assets were built on a foundation of sand. He called, his voice stripped of its usual confidence, babbling about market volatility and unforeseen circumstances. He stopped answering my calls a week later. The multi-million-dollar inheritance had been gutted. In a blind panic, I took control of what was left. I opened a day trading account fueled by caffeine and a desperate belief that I could fix it. I watched videos, read articles, and convinced myself I understood the rhythm of the market. I didn't. I was gambling pure and simple. I'd buy high on a surge of hope and sell low in a fit of terror. I made a bad trade, then a worse one to try and cover it. I wasn't managing money. I was watching it burn. Now, a year after stepping into that Malibu dream, the nightmare has fully arrived. The bank sent a certified letter this morning. The words, "Notice of Default," were printed in a calm, terrifying font. We were 90 days past due on the mortgage. Foreclosure proceedings would begin in 2 weeks. I logged into my bank account. The screen glowed back at me with the last vestiges of Robert's life's work. Total balance, $35,114. $28. It's not even enough for one mortgage payment. It's nothing. The debt is a mountain, and I'm standing at the bottom with a shovel. My breath catches in my throat, a dry, ragged sob. It's over. I destroyed it all. I destroyed times him, asterisk. I sweep the pile of angry red envelopes off the cold marble countertop. Bills, warnings, final notices. They scatter across the floor like fallen leaves. But one piece of mail remains. It's a thick, cream-colored envelope, official. It's not a bill. It's the quarterly statement for Chloe's $529 college savings plan. The one account Robert had ring-fenced, protected, and had managed by a separate, unassailable trust. The one account I never touched. My hands shake as I tear it open. The number inside is pristine, untouched by my stupidity. It's a lifeline. Enough to pay off the most urgent debts. Enough to stop the foreclosure. Enough to breathe for another month. Asterisk. Her time's lifeline. Chloe's footsteps echo on the stairs. "Mom?" "Who was at the door?" she calls out, her voice bright and full of a future she thinks is guaranteed. The statement felt heavier than the foreclosure notice. My fingers trembled around the crisp paper. $482.119. A perfect, beautiful number. A number built over 18 years of Robert's steady, disciplined contributions. For her. For Chloe's future. My future was a black hole. I didn't think. I couldn't afford to. I grabbed my phone, my thumb hovering over Chloe's number, then swiped past it. I found the number for the trust. My voice, when I spoke to the polite man on the other end, was a stranger's calm, authoritative hollow. I recited account numbers, answered security questions, and used the legal authority Robert had foolishly granted me as her mother and guardian of the funds until she turned 21. Liquidate the entire portfolio, I said, the words tasting like ash. Wire the full balance to my primary checking account. There was a pause. Ma'am, are you sure there will be significant tax implications and penalties for a non-qualified withdrawal? I'm sure I lied. The word was a stone in my throat. He gave me a final confirmation number. I hung up. It was done. I had just stolen my daughter's future to buy myself another month in a house I couldn't afford. For a few seconds, a wave of sickening relief washed over me. I could pay the mortgage arrears. I could pay the overdue property tax installment. I could keep the lights on. I could breathe. Mom. Chloe stood at the bottom of the sweeping staircase, her backpack slung over one shoulder, a bright smile on her face. I was thinking we could grab some sushi at Nobu tonight, my treat. I aced my calculus midterm. Her smile faltered as she saw my face. The pile of mail scattered on the floor, the single cream envelope in my hand. What's wrong? What's that? I couldn't hide it. I couldn't lie. The weight of the act was too immense. I held out the statement. She walked over her eyes, scanning the paper. I saw the moment she understood. Her face didn't crumble. It hardened into something I'd never seen before. A mask of cold fury that was all Robert. Where is it? She asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Chloe, honey, you have to understand. We were going to lose the house. I didn't have a choice. Where is the money? Each word was a chip of ice. My pathetic, hollow relief curdled into pure terror. I moved it. To my account. To pay the bills. It's the only way just for now. You liquidated my college fund. She snatched the paper from my hand, her knuckles white. My entire college fund, the money Dad set aside for me, the times he protected from you. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. That's not fair. This was our dream, remember? You wanted this house as much as I did. I was a kid, she screamed, the sound echoing in the cavernous, empty living room. I didn't know what it would cost. You were the adult. He trusted you. He worked his entire life, missing birthdays, missing holidays, just so we would be safe. So times would be safe. And you set it on fire to pay for this glass box? She swept her arm across the marble counter, sending a vase of overpriced lilies crashing to the floor. Water and glass sprayed across the pristine tiles. I was trying to save us, I cried, the tears finally breaking free. I made some mistakes with the investments. Mistakes. Her laugh was a shard of glass. You gambled it away. You took my father's life's work, everything he built for us, and you threw it away because you were too arrogant to listen to the one person he told you to trust. You fired Mr. Abernathy. Dad told me he called you 12 times. 12, and you never answered. I had no defense. She was right. Every word was a nail in the coffin of my self-delusion. "Chloe, I can pay it back." I whispered a desperate, pathetic lie. She stared at me, her eyes filled with a contempt that seared my soul. "No, you can't. You have nothing. You burned through $7 million. You burned through Dad. And now you've burned through me." She walked to the front door, her movements stiff and controlled. She didn't look back. "I'm going to go stay with Aunt Sarah," she said, her voice flat and dead. "I'll figure out school. I'll take out loans. I'll work 3 jobs if I have to. I will be fine because I'm Robert's daughter." She opened the door, the harsh afternoon sun silhouetting her. "But I want you to know something," she said, turning her head just enough to meet my eyes one last time. "When you're old and this house is gone and the money is a distant memory, don't call me. Don't ever ask me for a thing. You will not be my problem. You are not my mother anymore." The door clicked shut behind her. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavier than debt, deeper than grief. I stood there motionless amidst the wreckage of the lilies and the scattered bills. The wire transfer notification pinged on my phone, a cheerful, sickening sound. The money was in my account. $482,000 of my daughter's blood money. I sank to the floor, the cold marble seeping into my bones. The ocean crashed against the shore, outside a relentless, indifferent rhythm. It was the sound I had craved for years, the sound of my dream. Now it just sounded like a clock, counting down the seconds until they came to take everything else. I had traded my husband's legacy for a view of the water and my daughter's love for a few more weeks in a tomb. I had it all. And now I had nothing. Absolutely nothing left to burn.